Before we got married, we did this thing where we said the worst thing we've ever done.
Okay.
Are you serious?
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna order an Uber.
Emma, what the fuck?
It's this, it's D, and you're listening to It's Really That Deep.
We have takes on everything you're watching.
We're talking The Drama. The Drama is a 2026 American drama film written and directed by Christopher Borgli. It stars Zendaya and Robert Pattinson as a happily engaged couple whose relationship is tested by an unexpected revelation during the week before their wedding. Dee, why are we discussing The Drama? What do you know about it?
I don't think anyone who likes film could have avoided their marketing campaign, which was very successful, of course. And then I didn't hear much about it until, of course, the film came out, and then the discourse absolutely exploded. And I was fighting for my life to try and avoid it. And I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to let these people ruin this film for me. And I just got a late night booking to go and watch it. There was also the drama around the director, which I'd only seen like glimpses of. How about you? What did you know about the film going into it?
First thing I remember about it was at the end of last year when A24 released the first picture of Zendaya and Robert Pattinson announcing their engagement as the first bit of promotional material. And I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those movies. And ever since then, like you have been seeing all the marketing for it. I knew I was going to watch it. It's an A24 film, Robert Pattinson, Zendaya. It's exactly within our wheelhouse. I didn't know much about the filmmaker, and I've tried my best to be dodging spoilers in the last couple of weeks because I am currently in a place where watching this film it was actually quite tricky and difficult. A24, please give us screeners. And yeah, it was tricky navigating around that. And unfortunately, I have been spoiled by some things. For example, I saw this headline before I watched the film about how Columbine families were upset about the film in TMZ. So I already knew that a school shooting would be associated with the film. But other than that, I didn't really know too much. And in fact, I actually kind of thought this was a movie about inappropriate relationships with younger women. So that's what I actually thought it was going to be about because there was some discourse when the trailer came out where there are the shots of the young Zendaya, and I was like, oh, is that what this is about? So for that reason, I was able to go in not completely sure what direction they were going to take. And yeah, that's it. And then I went to watch it. Let's talk about the film.
Okay, so Des, was the drama good, bad, or mid?
I usually have such a strong answer for this question. I don't actually have an easy, obvious, strong answer for
Same.
this one. I think I will say good, but I could easily say mid too, but I think I'll say good. Good, I guess. What about you? I'm very curious.
So I've now seen this film twice, okay, after informing myself about all of the kind of context around it. I will maintain that this is a good film. I think that there are certain other films that have come out recently that wanted to be this film, frankly, which we'll get into. But having said that, I now have an extremely, extremely dark take on what this film actually is and the conversations that this director is trying to groom us into having.
Not groom. Okay. So, as like some quick, like just hot takes opinion on why I think the film is good, borderline mid, and why it took me a while, is that overall I like how the film looks. I think the film looks stylish. I think it looks good. I think for the most part, the lead performances draw you in. We'll get more into the acting though in detail later on. And I was genuinely engaged the entire time I was watching the film. Like I was curious to see how they were going to resolve this. I was wondering where this was all going. And it made me think you and I are going to have many, 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 many things to say about this film. So I love a film that has me ready to like conversate. The reason ultimately though I don't think it's a very good film, and I can't consider, and I would, even if someone told me they thought it was mid, I wouldn't debate with them, is because this film needs a level of escalation in the central performances in a particular way that I think does not happen.
Yes.
And I don't know whether that's purely an acting problem or is a directorial problem or is a screenwriting problem or is a combination of the three. But there is a level of turning things up to a zillion that I needed that shoe to drop. I needed that explosion to happen and it did not happen.
Mhm.
And I was just like, oh, okay, all right then. What about you?
So I must say this: the reason why I have to maintain that it's a good film, despite the dark things I'll be saying about it later, is because it was a fantastic cinema experience. It's one of the strongest cinema experiences I've had in a while. I've seen it twice. To be honest with you, the second screening was full of people that weren't as interesting. But my first screening, I want to just like, I wish I could just be friends with all of them. People were laughing. I
Oh,
was laughing. I found the film
really?
hilarious, to be honest, although I do think certain things crossed the line, but I'll get into that. I found a lot of it very funny. I like the way how it's shot. I think that's what cinematography works really well. Although I think perhaps the tricks, towards the end of the film, they probably overdid it, in my opinion. But obviously, the reason why all of those tricks are there is to set the tone that this is an uneasy situation. This is a moral gray area, and nothing here should be taken at face value. And I thought that was great. My big issue, though, is the handling of race, or should I say, the lack thereof. And I think, given the subject matter, and given how incredibly unlikely it is for Black women to be involved in this sort of crime, I think that the onus is on the writers to actually take me on the journey of how Emma got to that place. Not at all saying that it's impossible, because I'm sure, as we'll get into, there is a particular songstress who potentially was involved in the sort of online circles that have this sort of violent narrative. So I'm not implying that it's impossible, but I just think that the director wasn't interested in having that conversation at all. And I think that he actually used a mixed race Black woman character as a shield to shoehorn in a conversation that he wants to actually have about cancel culture as it pertains to a certain type of crime.
Oh, clock that. See, clock it, D, clock it. I can see the women. Yes, D,
And
yes.
also, I think Robert Pattinson's performance was brilliant. I wouldn't change anything about it. I think Zendaya's performance was very good. However, I think, because to me at least, this film thrives in ambiguity, I think the people who are reading this film in a black and white way are missing the point. But I actually don't blame them. And I'm afraid, I think I have to put the blame on either the writing around Zendaya's character, Emma, or actually the performance.
I
Because
think it's the
you
performance.
think, yeah, I'm leaning
I
towards
think
the
it's the
performance.
performance.
And because, like, Emma is too sympathetic. When they give us the scene of her being angry for once, it wasn't, I'm angrier when somebody like pushes past me on the street, like show me the actual anger. And I'll leave it there for now.
Let's talk about the narrative of the drama. In the first act of the film, we meet Zendaya's character Emma and Rob Pattinson's character Charlie in a cafe. Then we see them during married life, and then we see them having a dinner with their friends, their maid of honor Rachel and the best man Mike. In the process, they start talking about the worst thing each of them has done, and then Mike says that he used his ex as a human shield. Charlie cyberbullied someone. Rachel locked someone in an RV overnight. And then finally, Emma reveals that when she was 15, she planned to commit a school shooting and lost her hearing when she held a rifle too close to her ear. And soon everything just descends into chaos. What were your thoughts on this first act of the drama?
To be honest, I was quite bored as it got started. I was just waiting for the reveal to come. And I think the scenes leading up to that at the time were boring to me. Of course, now that I've seen it twice, I understand that the beginning sets the tone for what's to come, and like there are some hints dropped in there. I think the most notable thing about Act One is that obviously you have the reveal, and that whole scene I think was recorded quite well. To be honest, there are all sorts of hints about how potentially everybody involved in this scene is terrible. So whether that's Mike's passiveness and then like the consequences of that, which is that Rachel is just a terrible person and is getting away with a lot of bullshit. The fact that Rachel left that kid for dead and no one seemed to clock it, and also like she seems to be lying and making up a story on the spot as to why she did that, and also is that kid alive, which I found to be interesting. Also, we have Charlie, who he's just pathetic throughout the film. But I think this scene is a clear example of that. Everyone is being candid at least and saying actual bad shit that they did. But here comes Charlie, as far as I'm concerned, lying and making up something. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to downplay cyberbullying at all, but I just don't even get the vibe that he was telling the truth. And then, of course, we have the big reveal from Zendaya. I think what's tricky about Act One, that scene in particular, is that we want to feel sorry for Zendaya, but Rachel was just so insufferable. So it kind of takes away from it. What did you think about Act One?
I know you mean that it was kind of a bit slower than the rest of the film, but because I knew we were building up to something quite big, I was on edge while I was watching it and I was curious to see how we're going to get there. So in that way, it was able to keep me fully engaged. Also, going in, I was so curious about how Robert Pattinson and Zendaya's acting styles and performances would mesh to each other. So I was scrutinizing them both heavily. One of
Mm.
them exceeded my expectations. One of them did okay. Okay, in Act Two, Charlie begins reconsidering how well he knows Emma, and then Emma explains that she was planning to do the shooting because she was depressed and drawn to online communities, but ultimately she makes friends with some activists and she decides not to do it after there is another shooting that happens nearby. She starts having all sorts of nightmares, and Charlie starts getting paranoid and fixating on gun related imagery. Emma kind of compromises Rachel at work. Rachel withdraws from their friendship and says she doesn't want to attend the wedding anymore. Charlie is still crashing out and he asks his co-worker Misha how she would react if she learned her boyfriend had planned a school shooting. When she says she would call the police, he absolutely collapses. He's crying, he's sobbing, he's storming out of rooms, he's breaking down, he's a mess. And she comes to check in on him and he ends up kissing her. They start removing each other's clothes. My girl is ready, but he stops himself at some point and they agree not to tell their respective partners. Meanwhile, Emma also fires their DJ who they believed they had seen her smoking heroin earlier in the film. Act two, there's a lot going on in Act two. Thoughts?
There really was a lot going on. There really was a lot going on. Look, I will concede when I watched this in the cinema, I think this was the act that really made the drama a cinema experience. Everyone was laughing. I was laughing my head off. However, I think this is the act where I started to see the failures of this film as it pertains to race and the complete lack of interest from the director to properly engage with Emma's race and also even offer a potential argument for how a young black woman in America was radicalized to the point where she was going to be an extreme minority as a young black woman committing such a crime. I'm not even sure if a black woman has ever done that sort of crime in the US, by the way. I'm not sure. I think that young Emma did a really good job of convincing me that she was unsettled and the like. But I think that this is also the act where my issues with Zendaya's performance started to come about. So I do think that Zendaya put in a good performance, to be honest with you. I, in particular, think that she did a good job of playing the uneasy aspects of the role. But I think, like, as far as I'm concerned, this film is living in ambiguity. It's not a film that should be read in a black and white way. But I think that because Zendaya plays her role in such a girl next door, oh, it was just in the past, all of this sort of stuff. And but I'm a completely reformed person. I never get angry anymore. I feel like I lost some of that ambiguity. And so we had to rely on Charlie's flashbacks to see the more negative sides of her, of Emma, which I don't know. I think it could have been a stronger film if we just saw sudden flashes every now and again of Zendaya being a little bit, unhinged. I have to say, this act also includes my favorite scene from the film, or one of them, which is Misha when Charlie is preparing to engage in the act. Let's say she is fully bent over the counter, waiting, and even when he's like taken the time to actually reconsider and he's no longer interested, she is still bent, and it's just like it's so funny. Yeah, what did you think about Act Two?
I pretty much agree with everything you said. Act two was messy, it was chaotic, it was funny, it was entertaining. And yet, the main thing that I really wish it had was me watching Zendaya wild out more. I wanted her to be crazier, actually. I didn't need her to be walking around like some caricature of a violent school shooter, no. But I wanted to believe more that she was a person that was capable of truly planning extreme violence. And I'm not sure I was convinced with how Act 2 demonstrated. However, the person I was convinced by was Jordan Currat, who was playing young Emma, and I thought did an absolutely fantastic job of just being like, she felt like both a child, like a juvenile, naive child, and also like a potentially unhinged, very, very dangerous person.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought she did a great job at that. Um, I did do a quick check, and I believe there is one recorded black female school shooter in America who was in Nashville. And I think is from 2023, and I believe
Oh,
she's only the fifth ever recorded female school shooter at all, and I'm pretty sure she's the only recorded black woman one, as far as I know,
wow.
in all history. And we know how many school shootings be happening in America, so it's not impossible, like you and I have said, but because it is so extremely statistically improbable, you need to convince people like us that it makes any sense. Act two, like you, I loved everything involving Charlie's crash out and his mess, especially everything involving the co-worker Misha. Shout out to Haley Gates as well, because what that character needs to do, she
She
understood
did
the
it,
assignment very
absolutely.
clearly,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very funny. I was very impressed by all of that. It's in this middle act that you get a lot of the like provocative imagery of women with guns, with weapons, including Zendaya in sexually provocative imagery or attire. And I fully understand what the filmmaker is doing here. And it worked in kind of drawing me into this air of depravity about the film. And yet, at the same time, it also started making me suspicious. An
Mm-hmm.
important thing I want to note about the second act of this film in terms of narrative is that it is in the second act of this film as they explain the motivations behind young Emma's actions and explain her off ramp basically from doing the school shooting. That is our confirmation of why she actually didn't carry it out. And actually, it is a confirmation of just how horrible a person she is because it is the only thing that kind of objectively demonstrates to us that the reason she didn't do it was not because of any consideration for human life, her friends, or sorry, I know they weren't her friends, her classmates, or anything like that. It is literally because she felt like the attention had been taken by someone else, and some boy noticed her, potentially started flirting with her. So yeah, I think that's very important for people to note in when they talk about this character, and I feel like they're constantly missing. Another reason that's very, very important is because the whole idea that she kind of flips ideology very suddenly from this like
Mm-hmm.
violent person existing in borderline neo-Nazi, very far right, um, perhaps white supremacist influence, like violent fantasy spaces, to being this super activisty, left-wing coded person. I'm not saying it's impossible for black people or black women to do that, but historically, there's a demographic of people that do that in larger numbers, that
Mm-hmm.
wearing different hats of anti-establishment is just like a fun little game of musical chairs for them. And historically, it's not black women. And I'll leave it at that.
The other thing that's worth pointing out in Act Two, which I think some people are conveniently forgetting while they
Oh,
are in while they are defending Emma, is that I believe it's Act Two actually when we get that flashback where Emma is pointing the gun at a dog. And of course, the film leaves it up to us to decide, as with many of the flashbacks, whether or not this is actually something that happened or not. But all I'm saying is the film doesn't give me any reason to believe that she didn't shoot the dog, right? So I
oh,
think that when we're having conversations about, oh, Emma didn't actually do anything, she just thought about it, let's consider that scene and have a serious conversation about whether that happened. And also, I think that Act Two, I will give the filmmaker credit here. Act Two actually points towards Emma being actually a very manipulative woman, in the sense that we see Charlie trying to have the conversations with her to try and understand, and try and make himself comfortable about her past and what happened. And he rightfully asked her to break down, okay, how did you get to this place? What did you do to move forward? Did you go to therapy? Of which notably she says no. Um, but more importantly, instead of Emma actually hold like accepting that her partner is really trying to build connection here, he wasn't being judgmental as far as I'm concerned, although he was clearly scared. She decides that actually, you know what, this is too hard for me. I can't talk about this. Can we just wait until after the wedding? And like that's coercive behavior. No, you can't wait until after the wedding. You've just dropped a very serious bomb on this man about a very serious crime you almost committed. That, if someone was being unfavorable towards you, they can make an assumption about your temperament and your anger. So yes, before this man goes down the aisle with you, before this man potentially starts a family with you, he is being prudent by asking you serious questions. So I thought it was absolutely ridiculous for her to suggest that they wait until after the wedding.
Something else I wanted to point, you just reminded me about, is all the drama that happens. Oh no, not me doing the title drop by mistake. All the drama that happens with Rachel and Mike in this second act, and all the angst about, oh, is she going to attend the wedding or not? And Mike and Charlie going to go and meet her cousin, and them trying to convince people and beg people. And then we have that moment, which is well done, where it appears that Emma is hearing Mike tell Charlie
Mm-hmm.
that he should leave her, he should dump her, he should abandon her, he shouldn't go back into the house, that he'll even beat her up for him. And it's played in a way that it could be her paranoia and she's not actually saying that. I was thinking though, as I was watching it, that the implications of a biracial black woman hearing a black man telling her white partner that he should beat her up is kind of crazy. And I wonder if they understand what exactly they're implying about her paranoia manifesting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect they don't, but and it's just like coincidental. But like for me watching it, considering I know the statistics about intimate partner violence between interracial couples, is just
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Clock it.
Anyway, so yeah, anyway, all these things that are happening, all these answers over whether these friends should attend this wedding or not, whether they should, and in my head I'm like, just don't go. Like,
Exactly.
just don't go to the wedding.
I was actually shocked to see Rachel turn up at the wedding, by the way. I assumed she wasn't going.
Just don't go. And then also there's the additional step that they show Emma kind of being somewhat vindictive, even though you could argue it's like she's protecting her peace by
Mm-hmm.
by getting Rachel off of a project that she's on
Mm-hmm.
at work. And I'm like, okay, so you have even more of an excuse not to go. You're like, oh, okay, this girl actually just, in addition to clearly we had this big fight over something she confessed, whether you feel that was right or not, she has now actively taken action against me in my place of work. I don't need to go if I don't want to. Like all this fighting they're doing about it, I'm like, just don't go. Me, I don't be
Exactly.
hesitating if I don't want to be somewhere. Just don't go. Especially if you're not family. Anyway, so yeah, I found that kind of silly, but like I understand the plot purpose it serves, but it's just like, girl, be serious.
Mm-hmm.
In Act 3, Charlie and Emma ultimately marry as planned. During the wedding, Rachel gives a passive aggressive speech deriding Emma for her dishonesty and basically telling Charlie he's a simp and they deserve each other. Then Emma overhears our good sis Misha discussing a school shooting, and then she freaks out. She alerts Charlie about it. She pulls Misha aside to confront her, but Misha thinks that they're talking about the cheating, and she quickly says that, oh, it was Charlie that kissed her first, revealing what happened to Emma. Afterwards, Charlie gives an awkward speech at the wedding, announcing how much he loves Emma, apologizing for cheating on her with Misha, aka exposing that he cheated on her, and also talking about how, oh, it wasn't Emma's fault and how people are judging her too harshly, etc., etc., basically about the school shooting. Anyway, Misha's partner Blake furiously confronts and attacks Charlie. Emma leaves during the chaos. Last couple of things we see is a bloody and miserable Charlie returns to their apartment looking for Emma, doesn't find her, and then he just goes to their favorite diner by himself. Then she appears in her little puffer jacket. She sits across from him, and then they reintroduce themselves as if they're meeting for the first time. They smile tearfully at each other, and that's how the film ends. Dee, were you feeling the drama in Act 3?
Yes, I enjoyed Act 3 in general. I really enjoyed the chaos of it. I think the best thing about this film is Robert Pattinson's crash out. I think he did a phenomenal job. This act features my favorite scene in the entire film, and that is when Charlie breaks out into this like dance crash out when he gets back to the apartment after being punched in the face by my man. That guy who plays Blake is very, very attractive, by the way.
Dee,
So
please, please
after he's been
behave.
knocked out by handsome Blake,
Handsome Blake is crazy.
yeah, he breaks out into a dance, and I don't know, there was something about his performance that at that point he had pulled me in so much that I felt like I was in there just crashing out with him and dancing with him. So I thought that was really well done. To be honest with you, I was shocked that the wedding goes ahead in general. So I was just trying to accept that as the act starts. I think another thing worth pointing out about the wedding is that Emma's father gives a speech which shows us that actually he is a neglectful father. I actually think that he's one of the key villains of this film. But because he reveals that, yes, he's a proud military man, he's a proud, gun owning man, it's at this point that I realized that this film has actually made it such that only all the black people in this film actually are more closely associated to guns than any of the white people in this film, and in particular the white men, which I found to be abhorrent, to be honest. Because obviously we have Emma, who Loki was about to be a school shooter. We have the father who had a gun and didn't have any sort of hygiene around that gun. He didn't lock the gun up. His daughter was walking around with the gun. He didn't even know anything.
I want you to know that this storyline, it reinforces my argument that weapons, Gladys is a gun in the house,
Oh
but you
my
can
god,
proceed. You can
no.
continue. You can continue. It proves my point so
How
clearly.
does it prove your point?
I'm not going to explain myself
Okay.
any further. The people that get it, get it. You just need to listen to our weapons episode and you understand if you're really about it.
So yeah, we have Emma, her father, but also, in a scene that is being hotly debated online, Rachel reveals that Mike grew up around guns. Now, the way how she says it, she makes assumptions about his understanding or his comfortability with that, but he does concede that
Yes.
yes, my dad was a cop, and so yes, I was around guns, right? So it's like, okay, hold on. So literally, all the black people in this film were around guns, associated with guns, and two of them were like in favor of guns for a decent amount of time. But none of the white men are like being portrayed in
Ooh.
this way. So I just found that very interesting. And then there's the ending, right? So I know a lot of people don't like the ending. I personally love the ending, and here's the reason why. In this film is so intelligent in the sense that like you can take so many things away from it, right? So on the one hand, I would actually argue that this film is very romantic. Okay? It's actually
I
more
agree.
romantic than many films that claim to be romance films, right? In the
I
sense
agree.
that,
It's romantic in the sense that it wants us to believe in these characters' love for each other despite everything else
mhm.
in some way. Like it romanticizes that concept to quite an extreme.
So even though I know that you had issues with the scenes where Charlie is walking around with younger Emma, right? I actually like those scenes just because I get that it looks crazy. Don't get me wrong, I get it. But I think what those scenes are trying to show us is Charlie is trying his best. He's trying to force himself to love Emma for everything that she is, and that includes the potential school shooter, teenage Emma, right? So we see him almost trying to go on dates with her, like mentally in his head. Which again, if you consider who this
Oh,
director is, I'm just gonna leave that there.
oh.
Just consider who this director is when I say this, okay? But if I take a favorable view, that was how I saw it. So even when we get to the end, right? And Charlie, like he even in his speech at the end during the wedding, he's making excuses. He's trying to explain to himself why he needs to marry this woman, right? And even at the very, very end, we see that Emma herself, who by the way, Emma has the right to leave Charlie at this point. Even if I was her with all that baggage behind me, I'm still gonna leave that man at that point, right? But we see her once again trying to get with him. So you can see that this film is quite romantic in nature.
Even though I see that scene of him walking around with young Emma, a little girl, a teenager, I'm like, very suspicious. But on the flip hand, I guess since a big thing about Charlie is that they try and demonstrate that he will bend over backwards and go out of his way to try and justify, and like if he sees like the world is against Emma, he'll go out of his way to try
Mm,
and be like, oh no, no, but I'm the only one left that can defend. I'm the only one left that can be there for her. So in many ways, like he's imagining being that protector for her when she was a bullied
mm-hmm,
child in a way nobody else stepped up to be. So if you want to read it very generously, you can read it that way. And I think Robert Pattinson does a very good job in his performance in that you could actually legitimately read it that way. So I understand what you're saying. And
mm-hmm,
also, I
yeah.
think it's also important to juxtapose it that as you're seeing imagery like that, it's not far away from when you're seeing imagery of him fantasizing about her in her underwear with a giant machine gun on the bed. Because I think it's that thing that happens with men that the more they can like fantasize and fetishize about a woman, the more they can see
Yep.
themselves being her protector.
And I think that's especially important because of the racial dynamics as well, by the way. The real reason why I love the ending though is because although you can read this film as very romantic in nature, the ending solidifies for us that this relationship is a failure. And the reason why it's a failure is because these two do not do the work. Neither Charlie nor Emma do the work. Every time things get really hard, they simply start over, or Emma's pulling someone's pants down, or Emma's saying, let's start over, or Charlie's just being an avoidant. So it made a lot of sense to me that, we see them have this behavior throughout the film, and then we have this big crash out at the wedding. And again, these two just can't agree to go their separate ways, so they have to just start over. It made a lot of sense to me.
I love everything about the wedding. Even though I do love the messy Misha moments from Act Two, like you, my favorite moment in the film is Charlie's crash out during his wedding speech, and how he just continuously and consistently keeps on saying things that he truly doesn't need to say. Nobody asked him, nobody forced it out of him, but he just keeps on confessing and just keeps on disgracing himself. It's so pitiful, and I can't lie, I do love a pitiful man. So like I just found that extraordinarily entertaining to watch. And just all the chaos happening in the wedding, even though I found some of it a bit too over the top in how convenient and serendipitous it was. It was giving Nollywood film, it was giving telenovela sometimes,
Hmm.
but it was very, very funny. I enjoyed all of that. But it is in the third act that my concerns with Zendaya's performance from the second act truly come to a head, because we don't see her really lose her top in this film. Act 3 doesn't hit me with the final punch it's supposed to hit me with.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that lies with her and no one else, because everybody else is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. And she does a good job too. I'm not saying she does a terrible job, but she does not, for me, she does not cross the finishing line. She doesn't nail that final master stroke in the way that
Mm.
she can be the only one to do it, to deliver this film into greatness, in
I
my
agree.
opinion.
I agree.
Then the very ending, I like it conceptually, even though I will say, you know what it reminded me of, seeing them at that diner trying to like reintroduce themselves. I'm afraid it reminded me of your favorite film from last year, Twinless D.
No, absolutely not.
Yes, that's what it was given. I did like that. I like the image of a bloodied Robert Pattinson still in his wedding clothes, and her with the big puffer jacket. And again, like how that connects to the marketing campaign that A24 did. I think it was great. Like the visuals of them in the wedding clothes and stuff like that. Without being spoilery, it worked really well, and it was very satisfying when you finally see the outfits. So I enjoyed all of that. I liked how they framed and directed the shots. And in fact, the specific moments when Emma reintroduces herself, considering, the last time this happens was when she was trying to do a bit of like sexual role play with him and he wasn't feeling it. And this time the camera pans to Charlie's face, and you see the slow realization of like, oh damn, she hasn't given up on me. I see what she's doing
Yeah.
here. And it's avoidance, it's not healthy per se, but he decides that he wants to continue to participate in the games with her. He's just that down bad, and he he's ready to lean all the way in to this particular way she has of coping with stuff. And I think the acting Robert Pattinson does when he's going through that journey on his face and reacting to her, and also what Zendaya gives to him to react to, I honestly think it was very well done and I liked it. So again, I don't hate the ending, but there was just a final punch I needed. For a moment, when we first see her walk into the diner and the camera kind of watches her from the back as she's speaking to the person at the counter, I thought she was hiding a gun inside her
Oh,
puffer jacket. And
oh my
listen, I
God.
I also see a world where she whips out a gun in that diner would be a bit like cliche and like a bad ending, a bit too, what's the word I'm looking for? I can see a world where if she did that, that would not be a great ending either. But that's what I genuinely thought was about to happen. I didn't think it was going to be such a like sweet ending. So when the sweet ending ends, I'm like, oh, so Zendaya really never loses it in this movie. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And that's why I can't give it its tense. But overall, I enjoyed third act. I think this film does a good job of carrying its momentum over from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I agree. Des, does The drama passed the Bechdel test.
Yes, it passes with flying colors. Several of our female characters engage with each other in this film. Zendaya's character Emma is constantly talking to people like Rachel, her best friend in me, the heroin smoking DJ, Pauline. Frances, played by Zoe Winters, our good sis from The
Yeah,
Materialist, who did a very good job.
a film that is less romantic than this one.
You know, our conclusion with that film was that it was a horror film masquerading as a rom-com.
Yeah.
She also interacts with Misha as well. So yeah, she talks to lots of women in this film, and they talk about anything but men. Like sometimes they'll talk about Charlie, but oftentimes it's about her, what's going on with her wedding, her choices, things like that. In fact, I had to think very carefully to confirm if two men ever speak about anything that's not a woman in this film, because the times men do speak in this film is stuff like when Robert Pattinson's character Charlie is speaking to Mahmoudou Ati's character Mike, and it's almost always about Emma. And even
Hmm.
when Emma's dad speaks, I think he's almost exclusively speaking about her. So yeah, like this is not a film that is hesitant about focusing on people's conversations about women and not just men.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't have any issues with regards to how this film handles gender. Again, my only issue with this film is more so understanding the intersectionality of Emma's experiences, especially as a young black woman or young black girl in the United States. I think the film handles gender pretty well. We have a very complicated female character. She's surrounded by complicated female characters. We have Rachel, we have Misha, who's also a liar, by the way. You know, she pretends that she's gotten past cheating, but she was bent over that counter and waiting.
Misha is such a
Um,
mess.
I love her. I
I
love her
love her
character.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think that also like the film does go out of its way to contemplate how Emma, as a girl, is able to come to the place of almost becoming a school shooter. So we have Emma's little shady rant about how, oh, it's not just boys that are school shooters, it's also girls. And, you know, I was happy with that. I just really longed for a similar treatment of the racial aspect.
I thought so too. Although I will add a note on how he handles female relationships, in that it still does that A24 thing that
Mm,
we observe with materialists and with opus and a couple of it, which is that our female lead characters still have no sense of community or actual anything close to actual real serious bonds with other people in general, but especially women. Now, in the
mm-hmm,
case of this film, it is kind of the point. Like Emma was very isolated as a teenager. She was very lonely. She quite literally almost became a school shooter because of it. So like it's almost kind of justified, except part of the point of the film is that she
exactly.
grew out of that so much so that everybody in her life was shocked when they found out about it. But like actually, the version of her we meet as an adult is still quite isolated from
Thank
community.
you. And the film doesn't get into it, which I find really, really jarring. How can we say that Emma changed because she found community, but somehow as an adult she has found herself once again very, very lonely, but we're supposed to believe that her mentality around how to respond to that has completely changed? Why?
Yeah, like the real community we see here is her white best friend who clearly hates her, and the white best friend's black man who I won't even speak on that dynamic that's going on there, but if you know, you know, who is clearly no real friend of hers.
Hmm.
Um, if in fact, if you want to read the film literally, he was quite literally suggesting to her white partner that he would beat her up. I don't think
Hmm.
that's supposed to be read literally, but still, the
Hmm.
fact that she could even think that he would be saying that. And who else? We don't have any like distinctive members of attendees of the wedding that we know are
No.
Emma's friends. Misha is Charlie's co-worker, and we meet her dad. We don't really see properly what her dynamic with her dad is as an adult. And if I'm not mistaken, we don't know anything whatsoever about her white mother or her white family. So, what is the actual community that exists around her? So, once again, this trope continues to happen, and again, in isolation, in um, in a minority, it wouldn't be such a strange thing to me. But because it continues to be the majority of these kind of characters we see in these kind of films, especially when it comes to women, I'm like there is something weird going on in the screenwriting because this is not representative of real life.
I agree. Clock it. No, it's so true.
And it's not just when men are writing, it happens as well when women are writing. But I do think Christopher Borgley can look at how he's handled women in this film broadly and be like, I've done a good job. He has, actually.
Hmm.
But, and like, be proud of himself. But like this whole idea of have you accurately demonstrated what a woman who has grown to find community is actually like in adulthood? No, and I actually don't think a certain kind of man will even understand that he has not done that in this film.
Hmm.
Think about the black or biracial women leading up to their wedding. Would the conversations they are having with other women only revolve around one female friend?
Unfortunately, there is a particular person who's coming to mind in this whole conversation about a biracial woman, a biracial
No.
American woman marrying
Stop.
a British man, a British white man, and potential loneliness and not having people who are really like not really having community at her wedding, and people at the wedding, or people going to the wedding saying, oh yeah, I only met her recently, we're only basically saying they're only surface friends, and notably not having her family around.
D, I hope you're not suggesting a certain member of a royal family
That is exactly who I'm
or
suggesting.
ex-member. Oh,
Well, it's such a clear. I wonder if she was even inspired the script.
stop it, D, stop it.
This film is flirting with themes and concepts that are not at all impossible. The fact that we can name very well known people who remind us of different aspects of this character is very interesting. But again, I can't quite fully give the film credit because one, I think that we didn't get enough of the Machiavellian aspects of Emma's character, and two, yeah, they just didn't. They chose not to engage with what would have been a really interesting subject in the film, which is how Black people can be radicalized. And notably, this was a great example to give us a very angry Black woman or mixed race Black woman, and they just didn't take the opportunity, which I found disappointing.
But at the same time, I think to myself that in the hands of the people involved in this film, would they have had the
Mm,
range to truly handle that properly? And that could have gone really off the rails.
that's true, and then we would have been dragging them for filth. So
I mean, I'd have liked to see an attempt, but at the same time, I can see in many, many ways that can go really, really left. Really, really
mhm.
left.
Okay, so the drama was written and directed by Christopher Borgli, who is a Norwegian filmmaker. And in the run up to the film's release, his very problematic article that he wrote about his quote unquote relationship with a 16-year-old girl resurfaced. And with it came a lot of discourse about whether or not this man should even have a career, should we be supporting this film, and the like. I didn't see any of that before I watched the film. And in some ways I'm actually glad I didn't see it, because if I had seen it, I would have had an inherently negative view about this film, and I'm glad that I got to watch it and enjoy the positives of it before getting all the very negative baggage around it. But now that I am aware of it, and I've now seen the film twice as well, it makes me completely recontextualize what this film is actually about. And even though I said that I enjoyed it in the cinema, and I maintain I really did enjoy that experience, um, I don't actually believe that you can separate the art from the artist in many cases, and this happens to be one of them. Because in the letter, he talks about how even though his relationship is technically legal in Norway, it's still socially unacceptable because his friends judged him. He had to climb, in his own words, he had to climb out of his 16-year-old girlfriend's bedroom to
Oh,
avoid her parents when they returned from their holiday, right? And I want to make one point very, very clear. I haven't seen any of his other films, but based on what I have seen about what these films are about, this director is very interested in having a conversation about cancel culture. So now, yes, his other films are about cancel culture. So
of
if we now
course.
marry up the fact that this film, in my view at least, is using a Black woman as a shield to have a conversation about a crime that is actually really perpetuated by white men vast majority of the time. He wants us to have a very serious conversation about judgment, and very important, as you alluded to as well, this film deliberately wants us to have a negative view of Rachel, which I still do, by the way, but the film wants us to judge the people who are doing the majority of the judging, right? This director has a very
Clock it.
questionable past.
Clock it.
His other films are all about cancel culture. I genuinely feel that this film is just a thinly veiled attempt to get us to a point where we are judging, having a conversation about judgment with another crime that is considered to be completely abhorrent, so that he can then maybe produce another film and substitute out the gun crime and replace it with the crime that he actually wants to discuss. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Oof,
What do
that's
you have to say?
messy. Well, I'm so happy you kind of crystallized a point that has been in my head for a while, but I didn't have the right words to use to describe it, which is that what is happening with that Rachel character and with other characters, but is particularly potent with her, which I think people are not
Mm-hmm.
realizing that they're inadvertently falling into doing, is that you're exactly falling into the trap that he specifically wants us to all fall into, which is to make a whole point about how dare you judge a person for doing despicable things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can make great art about the hypocrisy of human nature and how, remove the plank in your eye before you look at someone else's, etc., etc. I'm very interested in that conversation. And you and I
Mm-hmm.
both like this film. So all these critiques we're
Exactly.
giving is not actually us saying that this results in a bad film. I don't think it does. However, we really must inquire
Mm-hmm.
about what the intention is actually of what's going on here.
Exactly.
You can make great art that is asking the question of why do human beings judge each other so harshly? Or how do people decide what is morally unacceptable and what is not? Very valid, interesting point of view, right? And yes, Rachel is a terrible person. Yes, she basically left that kid for dead. Yes, she's basically unapologetic about it. All true. But yes or no, Zendaya's character was going to murder children. And
Children.
it's like what exactly are we doing here when the film is trying to frame things in a way that, like, yes, the characters are judging Zendaya's character harshly, but the film itself
Mm-hmm.
is framing Rachel as the villain of this story. And that's
Yes.
kind of a scary thing if you step back and actually realize what it's trying to get you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, she's a terrible person, they're all bad people, but like it must not be understated that Zendaya's character Emma was going to murder those children, and the only reason she did not do it was not because of any internal personal check of her own consciousness. That did not
Exactly.
happen. So the idea that the one character that's really holding her to account on this, because Charlie doesn't, it all turns into some sexual fetishization with
Mm-hmm.
him, and Mike is just a clown. The one person that is really holding her to account on this happens to be like a caricature of a nonsense person with no ethics whatsoever. So the
Mm-hmm.
lasting impression inadvertently that the film leaves on you is that anybody that is truly, truly questioning Zendaya's character is probably a really bad person themselves.
As much as I enjoyed the film, I knew something wasn't quite right when I got to the end of the film. And I was like, what is this film really, really about? I knew that it wasn't about what it pretends to be about. It's because I've seen some people say this is a critique on America's gun crime history. I actually don't think it is. I
Not
think it's
at
just a
all.
tool. And again, I genuinely believe it's just a substitute. And in the future, if this director goes on unchecked, he will substitute out this crime and put in the crime that he wants to discuss.
And the seeds are planted here because I told you one thing that really made my eyebrows raise was that scene of Robert Pattinson's character Charlie imagining himself walking hand in hand with the younger version of Emma.
I think the single scene that really made that clear for me on the second rewatch was when in that scene where all the couples are discussing, right? What's the worst thing you've done? And someone brings up in a very flippant way, no, it wasn't a pedo. And then they have this whole conversation about, oh well, that's a whole different thing, and I'm just like the way how that conversation comes about, given who wrote this film, given who directed it, I'm just like I genuinely feel like they wanted to take that off of the table for this particular conversation because again, the whole point is to have that conversation in the future. That's my personal opinion on it. I'm gonna leave it there. Okay. I wanted to discuss Another part of the discourse I have found very troubling, as you have, it seems, is this immediate defense of Emma. And I understand why we're doing it. And again, this is why Christopher knows what he's doing. He made the I really wish the Rachel character wasn't as caricaturous, because it takes away from the actual philosophical conversation we're supposed to be having. The real question being asked here is, how do you actually know who you, and based on your own morals, I'm not even getting to like morals about who you should forgive and who you shouldn't forgive, but based on your own morals, who is a good person, who is someone that should be in your life? The harsh reality is we never know, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with. In defense of Emma, people are saying, oh, but she didn't do it. Oh, but you know, she was an activist, right? She joined the activist group. And I'm like, guys, have you forgotten BLM? Don't you remember that performative activism is a real thing? Don't you remember the
Oh
white men
God.
walking around talking about, I'm here for black dick. I'm here because I need to protect the black dick. I like to ride black dick, so I have to be at this. All of that nonsense. All the people that only came to BLM protests because they wanted to avoid various lockdowns that were happening.
See, don't forget all the corporations that were pledging A, B, C, D, and 3 years later, they have the most draconian crackdowns on their
Mm-hmm.
black, female, and queer employees, and they're laying them off en masse.
Exactly. Now, although this is my take on Emma's activism, to be frank with you, the reason why I don't think that's a far-fetched take is because of who produced this film, and that's Ari Aster. And by the way, Ari Aster and Christopher Borgley, they have a long history of working together, which I didn't know either. Okay,
Interesting.
very interesting, but I'm not going to comment further on that. Ari Aster produced a film called Eddington, which which was very, very divisive online. A lot of people of color, a lot of I think some queer people were upset about it as well. But that film is a scathing attack on certain types of performative white activists.
Yes, but from the perspective of a very
Yes,
particular kind of white man.
that film quite explicitly calls out certain types of performative activists. And when we get that shot of Emma at the protest, there was something about the way how it was shot where I immediately saw the Eddington vibes. Immediately,
Correct.
it
I
was
agree.
it was giving like, and I'm saying this as someone who used to be very much a protester, by the way. But I know that there are certain types of white people in particular, especially certain types of white conservative people, who look at especially black people, especially black women who are out protesting, and see us in a very like, they just see us as like, oh, you're lost.
You're just looking for purpose.
Yes,
I remember also in Edinburgh, a big thing was the guys that were doing it just so they could hook up with liberal girls.
yes, yes, very important, right? Because even the way how, you know, the boy who encourages Emma to join the protest, right? The way how they film his face as Emma's talking about how, oh, well, there were women who were also mass shooters as well.
It's flirtatious.
Yeah, yeah, it's flirtatious. Again, very similar to the vibe in Eddington. So basically, stop interpreting this film in a very black and white sense. I don't think you will get the context of what's underpinning all of this, frankly.
Yeah, the film is very meta in that it's trying to draw us, the audience, into participating in the conversation, in the quote unquote judgment cycle or loop that the protagonists are in a way that is ultimately trying to condemn us,
Hmm.
right? And again, that can be fine in art, but at the end of the day,
Yes.
what are you actually saying is and is not worthy of condemnation? And the level of seriousness of that can be very, very dark. And I find it to be very dark here. I'm like, what are you
Hmm.
actually up to here? And you know, in many ways, Robert Pattinson's character, in my opinion, is serving as some kind of avatar for the filmmaker in that as a European, well, he's British, but you know what I mean.
Hmm.
As a European, he's commenting on how
Yeah.
like, oh, the reason she's like this is because of ABCD American culture. Da, da, da. Like they kind of factor in that perspective of a non-American commenting on America's unique relationship with gun violence when it comes to young people, right? In a way to somewhat remove, kind of separate yourself from the film and separate the filmmaker who is now, you've confirmed to me, is European. His culpability in what this film is potentially like
Hmm.
glamorizing or trying to find excuse for. But in my opinion, that's actually a hoax. Like that's yet another way to draw the audience into inadvertently justifying the unjustifiable.
Hmm.
I just hope people are very conscious of what they consume. Let's talk about femcel, incel, 4chan culture, because in the film we see all these shots of Emma's character when she's young. And again, shout out to the actress, she did a really good job, both dramatically and comedically, because there was supposed to be some comedic elements to some of those scenes of her trying to upload her videos and go live and do
It
her
was
manifestos.
hilarious.
And
I was
it
cracking
managed
up.
to be funny for something so dark. So she did a really great job. And let's talk about what this film is trying to do. Now, first of all, we should add that race is a social construct, and we grew up in environments where biracial or mixed identity is separate from Black identity in a way that is different from the US. In the US, because of one drop rule and other factors, for the most part, biracial people are included in the umbrella of Blackness. So that means in the US, Zendaya in real life, and by extension, this Emma character is considered a Black woman in a way that wouldn't necessarily be the case in the environments you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
But it's very important to note that, because simultaneously we have to address how this film is presenting this character as a Black woman within the context of the US, but also how the history of how biracial women navigate these kind of spaces is also still kind of a bit different from Black women, non-biracial
Absolutely.
Black women. And one person I couldn't stop thinking about as I was watching this film was a certain female rapper, Doja Cat. I'm not in any way saying or suggesting that Doja Cat is a mass shooter or was ever considering being a mass shooter, but it is a fact that Doja Cat comes from an internet culture of being very online, being on all sorts of live streams and chats and forums that are frequented by incels, racists, red pilled guys, edge lords, and the like. And over the course of her career, which she has somehow managed to square that circle with somehow being a very successful mainstream artist, she feeds them breadcrumbs every now and then. She's still a very active streamer, and her aesthetic many times when she's streaming is this very e-girl aesthetic that leans into that world. And there's certainly, and I'm a person that listens to Doja Cat quite a lot, because in terms of technical rapping ability, she's a very good rapper. There's certain things she says when she's rapping that I'm like, this is coming from you being in all those 4chan boards. I can hear it. I know exactly what you're referencing.
Didn't she have a
And
line about, oh, they didn't do nothing, which is literally a
yes,
racist
no, she has a song
dog whisper?
called Didn't Do Nothing.
That's insane.
It's a whole song. She also has a song called N Words Ain't Shit. And the song is from the perspective of a woman complaining about men in relationships. But because of her history, because of her identity as a very light-skinned biracial woman, and because we know that historically, at least as far as we know in public, she does not date Black men, and because a significant part of her audience and people that attend her concerts are not Black people, the implications of her releasing that song and performing that song live is just wild. Doja Cat has some like very complicated backstory about her identity, not just within race, but within nationality, because she was raised by her white mother in the US after her Black South African father essentially abandoned her and her brother and her mom. And ever since then, this man is going around saying, oh, this white woman has brainwashed my children against me. Meanwhile, he has other abandoned children in South Africa. So he's not a good person. And there's all this evidence of when she was a young girl, she was going around emailing people, contacting people in South Africa, asking if they knew her father because she was trying
Oh,
to
that's
reach
so
out to him. So
sad.
yeah, it's really messed up. So there's a lot of complicated things about her racial identity and her national identity. She's been on stream before complaining about her hair texture, even though recently she
Yeah.
has switched away from that, in that she now pretty much exclusively moves around with just her natural hair out. And she has a song talking about how she took off the wigs and showed off her fussy. So we could dedicate 2 hours to unpacking Doja
Yeah.
Cat as two Black women. But the point is, she also comes from a world of some of this webcam, incel far right bro culture, and it's unusual that she comes from that world in celebrity culture because of her identity as a woman with some black ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very notorious thing that happened. Well, actually, there too. There is a very viral, iconic tweet by someone, I think it was Noriega, saying she was in the racial chat rooms showing feet. And that has become like a viral thing that people say. And I remember as I was watching the drama and I was seeing her trying to use her internet to upload her various school shooter fantasies for a bunch of guys that almost certainly will also be racist. I was also thinking in my head, she's in them racial chat rooms showing feet. And especially when you have those scenes where Charlie is kind of fantasizing about seeing Emma in lingerie on the bed holding a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, the kind of white guys that engage with women of color in these kind of spaces, they get off on some of the idea of the contradiction of all of this. So I just found that
Absolutely.
really interesting. And with Doja, I think a year or two ago, and she's an edgelord, she tries to do stuff to get a reaction all the time. So she posted a picture of
Mm-hmm.
herself in a car wearing a Sam Hyde t-shirt. Who is Sam Hyde? And it caused a lot of fear. Who is Sam Hyde, you might ask? Sam Hyde is an internet edgelord meme character who is a quote unquote alt-right comedian, an
Oh
open white
dear.
supremacist who has ties to the neo-Nazi movement, who he's become this kind of weird meme figure amongst like the red pill, the 4chan, the incel bros, in that when a school shooting happens, they post pictures of him and they say it's a trans person that did it and it's a picture of Sam
Oh
Hyde.
my
It's like a
God.
little, it's a weird inside joke amongst them and like he participates in it. And he's like a Nazi. Like I'm not. That's just what he is. He's just a Nazi, right? He spews white supremacist rhetoric, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?" Now, when I saw it, I wasn't that shocked because I know the specific world she comes from. So I was like, "Yeah, if she was posting this." On her little chats with her little incel bro friends, they would love it. They will go crazy over it. That's the kind of stuff they eat up, and they would love seeing someone like her specifically wearing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now she's letting that little inside dark world that she belongs to spill over into the mainstream, and people are like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, something that she usually doesn't do is that she doesn't usually make apologies for these things she do. But for the first time for a long time, when she had some interview with Apple Music, she made a comment and she basically apologized for it. She said, I'm not a political person at all. I feel like when it comes to that sort of things, I have to back away from that. And it's not something I want in my life. Oh, that she basically implied that she didn't fully understand what she was wearing, which is a
Okay.
lie. She said, you can't know everything. And me wearing a t-shirt of someone who I thought was funny is an attack on people. It's not an attack. It doesn't affect the world in a way where we now have to look behind our backs. We don't. I'm going to get a response saying from people saying, yes, it did. It's going to change everything. But I want to separate myself from this narrative, blah, 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 blah. There's fans that know that know that I don't put involvement into whatever that negative thing was. It was just a funny guy on the shirt that I wore on that day, blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
And it's just like, girl,
Funny
you
guy's
know what you're
interesting.
doing. Really interesting. Really, really interesting. Anyway, so I couldn't help but think that, like, on the mood board, when they were constructing the idea of what this Emma character would be as a young teenager, especially after they had cast biracial Zendaya, was Doja Cat on the mood board? If I was a production designer or researcher during the development process, I'll be like, yeah, let's go research into how the few times stuff like this happens in real life, let's go read how these kind of young women justify this to themselves. And an obvious one to me would be to research the Doja Cat phenomenon. So I'm
So
just
I don't know
I
if I would. I don't know if I'd give that credit to the team itself, but I highly suspect that the actress who decided to play younger Emma, I would be very surprised if she didn't do her research there. That's all I would say.
and that's pretty much it. Like, again, I'm not saying Doja Cat is a mass shooter or she's involved in mass shootings. All I'll say is, even despite all my criticisms, that the choice to make this character a biracial woman without actually really truly adjusting that into the text, has to be balanced out by the fact that there is the existence of certain kind of biracial Black women who engage in this culture on the internet. It does exist, and there is a very, very famous one, very famous one that exists.
Who do you think the actual villains are in this film?
By the end of the film, to me, the villain is Rachel.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree. The film definitely wants us to conclude that the villain is Rachel, but my personal interpretation
And
of
maybe
this
the
film,
dad as well.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like
Emma's
I
dad.
think I think the main villains here are the father for his negligence and the mother as well, because you're another parent as well. How is Emma getting this much time to walk around with a gun? And again, I can't stress it enough. She, in my view, she did shoot that dog. I think she shot that dog.
Again, you know which demographic of people is known for tormenting animals.
Yes. I'm just going to leave it there. And again, I think this film is hinting at the fact that Emma belongs to that category. But
Oh,
anyway, then we also have the other villain for me is the racist, misogynist society that Emma lives in. Because that is the reason why she ends up being radicalized and potentially the reason why she was bullied, even though I don't think I can give that credit to Christopher Borgley because they didn't actually get into that at all, which I found to be disappointing.
just think about the example I just gave of the celebrity we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about the backstory of her angst about her racial identity
Mm-hmm.
and how it's tied to her father. You can clearly
Exactly.
see the thorough line from that to her entering these kind of radical spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas within this universe, yes, her dad is clearly irresponsible with how he handles his weapon, but otherwise, he seems to generally be a wholesome father, and we don't get anything about her white mother at all.
At all.
So
Yeah.
we don't really, so there's no real good understanding of context of why a biracial girl is going to fall this thoroughly down into this pipeline.
Yeah. I think that I'm sorry to say, Emma is also a villain for a reason that people are not picking up on, and I find it deeply disturbing.
Go for it.
Emma coerced Charlie into marrying her.
Clack it.
Charlie, again, I don't like Charlie. I think he's a villain as well. I think he's a villain because he's spineless. He doesn't have a backbone. I can't stand the character. Having said that, Charlie does try to do the right thing by saying, listen, okay, this is kind of crazy. I've learned something new about you. Can we sit down and discuss this? It was very just for him to say, can we have this conversation? Because, like, this is a lot. And when he's asking her, in my opinion, very tame questions, and even the way how he asked the questions were very much coming from a place of like care. Because if he was really angry, he would have gone all the way. But even under light questioning, she weaponizes her tears. She breaks down and says, oh, this is too hard for me. Can we discuss this after the wedding?
Yes.
Hell no. Are you crazy?
Are you
That's
crazy?
coercion.
Are you crazy? We're going to have potentially children in this household.
And for me, the biggest villain in this film is society's obsession with romance and the wedding industrial complex.
Oh,
Because
clock it.
if these two were only going to keep dating and not get married, the tension for this film actually collapses because it just becomes a okay, we can take our time to slowly work through this, which I think would have been the healthier approach. Because at the time when Charlie decides to marry Emma, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't have enough information about the incident that took place. And we know that because he actually starts to lie to his friends about the true reasons why Emma decided to do or contemplated what she did, and in my opinion actually took the steps to enact that. The amount of discourse about how Rachel is the true villain and Emma, she didn't do it, and you know, she changed, she's an activist now, and there's just no critical analysis of any of that. And I'm not saying that we should come down on Emma like a ton of bricks, as we're about to discuss. I believe that people can change, but what I'm saying is before you take the step to forgive someone, you actually need to know what the hell happened. Given the way how people are like having a knee-jerk reaction to defend Emma's character, which by the way I think is inherently linked to pretty privilege, people are having this knee-jerk reaction, and it's because they saw the fantasy of all the marketing of Robert Pattinson and Zendaya getting married, and people are so invested in this the concept of romance, and we need to have these pretty people be together.
And don't forget that they used Tom Holland and Zendaya's real life marriage as part of the marketing for this film.
Yes, which I find crazy, but anyway.
Don't forget that. That's
If they
another
like it, I
very
love
important.
it.
That's why I said the whole thing is all very meta.
The only reason why people are going this far to completely overlook everything that Emma was about to do. Children were about to get shot up. And that goes to show you just how serious this obsession with romance is. It's very, very, very scary to me.
Okay.
I'm not saying that Charlie should have
Okay.
never married Emma, but he should have taken the steps to actually understand. And he was right to ask the questions.
I will say it, he should not have married her. Nah, by the end of the film, I'm like,
Really?
you know what? They probably deserve each other or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
like, if I'm in his shoes, under no circumstances am I marrying this individual just because you can't be the person that raises my children. I'm sorry, like I don't know, but we will get it. So, D, what's the worst thing you ever did?
So as I said, I can relate to this film on many layers. A fun fact, I was actually bullied in year seven. I was
Oh,
bullied by a girl who I used to be friends with, and then she just suddenly switched on me. And yeah, long story short, probably the worst thing I did, I used to fight people in school. Yeah, I used to knock them out.
physically.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to physically fight people in year seven. I got kicked out. Um no,
That
seriously.
is crazy.
But
I never knew that.
yeah, but here's the thing. I grew up in a house with two sisters, cramped house. I already knew how to fight, period. But yeah, long story short, what would happen is this girl, she kept trying me. But the other thing is that I grew up in a Caribbean household, and the rules in that house was don't let nobody slap you. If they hit you,
Mm,
don't come home until you hit them back. So period. She put her hands on me and I knocked her out. Simple.
that's so
I'm
interesting.
very proud to say that I haven't been had a fight since year seven. You know, I'm a reformed person. I will say I have a quick temper, but this is why I know that Emma hasn't changed in this film, by the way, because I know I had to do a lot of work to get to where I am now, where I don't really allow people to get me to a certain stage.
Mm.
But I can see that Emma doesn't actually do that for reasons that we'll get into. But yeah, I used to knock these bitches out. What do you think? What was the worst thing
What's the
you did?
worst thing I ever? Okay, I'll give a violent one and a non-violent one. Um, for the violent one, I remember it so clearly. I was about 10, 11 years old, so similar age to you. We were in what we would call primary six in Nigeria. And there was a girl who I grew up with, and she just always used to talk too much. She just always used to do too much, always performing beside me, always like just I found her very irritable. And she was just doing too much about me and she was throwing a fit and I slapped her in the face. Like she was
Period.
too close to me and I literally slapped her. And I still remember it so clearly, even though it was so many years ago. When I did it, the level of horror I felt when my hand struck her face.
Oh,
And I was like, oh my God, like I felt like you're so animalistic. Like you really let your emotions lead to you striking someone that hadn't touched you. It was so unacceptable to me. And I felt so horrible about it. And ever since then, it's going to sound very dramatic. I have never touched a human being in my life. Like, no matter what you do to me, you will never get me to resort to physical violence. Obviously, self defense is a completely different
yeah,
conversation. And I'm blessed and lucky that I've never been in a situation where I have to use self defense with my physical hands. But in like I am very, very intentional about how I let people get me worked up because I'm
yeah.
so scared about how I felt when I did that I've never wanted to get near that feeling again. So that
Mm-hmm.
would be the closest one to physical violence. And in terms of like it's something that like I feel like was a genuinely bad thing I did, even though it sounds kind of small. I was on vacation with someone and I picked up their phone for some reason and I was going to get something, and they must have given it to me unlocked. And I looked into their messages, and I'm so, I'm, I'm always complaining to people about like how I don't like it when my family invades on my privacy and my boundaries and my personal space. But I was just a bad person in that moment, and I was inquisitive, and I looked in their messages, and I opened one of their messages, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh shit, and I closed it, but like I had opened in a way that it would become clear that message has been opened.
Oh, okay.
And I immediately started freaking out that, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I closed it and I did it, even though I had the phone still for quite some time after that. I didn't touch it again. I didn't look into it. And for the rest of the trip, and probably for the rest of that year, and it still affects how I interact with this person till today. I wonder if they were wondering, like, why is this being so nice to me? Because I felt so horrible about
Oh, bless.
but I was also too cowardly to confess them that by the way I opened your message. I was just hoping, okay, in the middle of loads of other messages that they're sending, this person wouldn't notice that. Wait, I never opened that chat.
But did you
And I was
find
like,
tea though?
I did,
Oh no.
I did. That's why I opened it.
Oh no.
And it was so horrible because I would hate if someone did that to me.
Yeah, I get it.
So, and it's probably even the thing is that the tea I found is probably one that if I really wanted to speak to the person, they would probably be kicking with me about it if I really asked. So I was just being a nonsense human being, and I felt so horrible about it. And it's probably not the literal worst thing I've ever done, but in terms of my own personal ideals, I felt like it was so deeply hypocritical. So I consider it to be a very horrible thing I've done. So that's again not the worst things I've done. I've probably done worse things in my life, but those are two obvious ones that come to my head. Anyway, on that note, is Emma a good person? Is she a bad person? And has she changed? Do people change?
I think people can change. I've also forgiven someone that has been, well, I wouldn't say forgiven. It's just like I accepted someone after I found out that they have been actually convicted for a very serious crime. Everyone has their limits. So for me personally, I can't pass sexual crimes. If you have a history of sexual crime, I just can't get past that. This person has been convicted for a crime related to guns. Nobody got hurt, but like frankly, somebody could have gotten hurt, right? And she's actually one of my really dear friends to this day. And
Not
I remember when she told
she.
me her, yes, she. That's what I'm saying. I can relate to this film heavy. Anyway, long story short, my friend is very remorseful about what happened. She went to jail for it, but I can see that she's moved on. She's changed her life. She's thriving now, right? So I can see that you shouldn't just judge someone because they did something terrible. Also, I grew up in a really poor part of London. People I went to school with, very serious things. People have been involved in drug trades. People have been killed. I remember when I was at school, boys were bringing knives to school. And also, those sorts of crimes they were doing, it was coming because of the capitalist system that we live in. So, no, I'm not just going to condemn someone because I don't know, they were involved in the drugs trade, when they were 14 or something, right? Having said all of that, everyone who I'm still speaking to has done something very, very serious. I know they have done the work because I saw them do the work. In this film, Charlie doesn't have the privilege of seeing Emma work through her difficulties, right? So if I met someone today, for example, that had, I don't know, even let's say they were planning a gun crime issue, I would try to figure out, have you done the work, right? Now, here's the thing with Emma. I think that this film gives us a very serious hint, or a number of hints actually, that Emma never does the work, as you say.
Clock it, yes.
Every time their relationship gets tricky, what does Emma do? Oh, let's just start over. Let's just start over. That is how Emma solves things. So if you're in this mood of like understanding the complexity of human beings and trying to work through things with people, in order to keep yourself safe, especially for me as a woman, especially in a dating context, if I was dating a man that revealed this sort of thing, probably I'd just walk away, to be honest, because I'm not taking the risk. But like you actually have to do the work to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, and Charlie never does it, and Emma never gives us reason to believe that she has changed as far as I'm concerned.
And in many ways, you see that in how she actually gets quote unquote de radicalized as a teenager, in
Yeah.
that the activists coming to her and like giving her this opportunity to become like to rebrand as this anti-gun violence person is an opportunity for her to start a clean slate and rewrite her personality.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Mm-hmm.
the same way she does at the end of the film. So once
And
again, it's
every time
about
before that as well.
yes. So once again, it's about like recreating a new identity to avoid addressing perhaps like the darkness that you need to unpack within.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately though, once I see the text of what is being of the intention here, and again, shout out to that young actress who was playing young Emma. She helped me come to these points very clearly because I understood what she was depicting in Emma very well. Like I found that she made those points very well. Again, her name is Jordan Curret. Good job, girl. The movie almost misses the point with me with Zendaya
Mm.
because even though I think she does a pretty good job of generally like showing a woman that has something that she's hiding, and I think her chemistry with Robert Pattinson was okay, and I do genuinely like the delivery of some of the lines in the final scene in the diner. Ultimately, the performance I can't say it's a success to me because I don't fully believe this sinister person that she is. It feels a bit too surface level, the performance,
I
especially
agree.
compared to other actors actors in this film that are delivering at such a serious level, especially her main scene partner, Robert Pattinson,
Yeah,
has thrown himself all the way into this character and his fuckery. So I need her to throw herself all the way into it too. And it doesn't
yeah.
happen.
Let me tell you right now, I had to do the work to stop fighting those bitches in school. Even when you make the change to try and be less of an angry person, it's still an everyday working process because people will try
Continuous.
you. Yeah. So
Yes.
what I'm saying is like even when the writing gives Zendaya a chance to show us just a glimpse of the crazy in you, just give us a glimpse of it. Right? For example, when she's crossing the road and I think someone tries to run her over, that would piss me the fuck off. It seems like it's hard for her to get like some bass in her voice to really cuss them out.
Yes, exactly. And I keep wondering that is part of this entangled with Zendaya's identity as the particular kind of star celebrity she is.
Mm,
A Disney child star turned general darling of fashion and culture who has pretty much managed to maintain a pristine image her entire adult life, which is a great success in how she was raised, how she conducts herself, her the people she surrounds around her. Many of her fellow child stars have fallen down all sorts of dark pathways that she seems to have avoided, and she generally conducts herself with grace in public. Good for her. But to some degree, what you need to do to be able to maintain that across your entire adult life, does that mean that you are to some degree incapable of truly becoming unhinged in public and like
mm,
giving a rawness to your performance and just losing it in a way that many times these roles require of her, she's not able to deliver. And this is also partly tied into her identity as a biracial woman that represents, quote
mm,
unquote, so many Black women on a huge platform. She's many times, maybe to some degree, she might feel, or her team might feel, she's not allowed to wow out as much as her white male peers or her white female peers because she's representing all Black women, basically.
yeah.
And it's unfortunate because she is one of the most bankable young female actresses in Hollywood. I continue to see her in so many stuff, from the huge big budget things like the Dunes to the other like more, indie stuff like this and Challengers. And she's still yet to blow me away. I think the drama is probably the closest. I
Mm-hmm.
can't say I had very low expectations for her because I thought she was quite poor in Challengers. So I expected
Yeah, I
something
agree.
similar here. She was better than Challengers here for me, but it was still not what I wanted to give. I kept on thinking as I was watching her that another actress would have taken this film from a kind of good film to an excellent film for me. And it's unfortunate.
Like, this is the time to show us the angry Black woman, by the way. This is the one time, Hollywood, for you to show us an angry Black woman. And she just didn't do it. And I don't know, maybe it's related to what you said. She
That
feels
little
pressure. I don't
Jordan
know.
Curette girl, she was playing an unhinged little Black girl
Mm-hmm.
in those
She did her
flashbacks,
job.
and she did her job. And I was like, this is a crazy girl. Get me away from her. I wouldn't say that I felt like I wanted you to get me away from Zendaya as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she didn't creep me out, really. Not as much as she
Mm-hmm.
needed to. And because the film is doing all these things with editing and stuff, which it does very well, by the way, of trying to build up a feeling that you should be on edge, that at any moment she is going to snap and she's
Yep.
going to commit a serious act of violence against Robert Pattinson or one of these other characters. The film, the environment, the tone, the score, the cinematography, the editing, Robert Pattinson performance do a great job in setting that tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you finally need to fully pull it off is Zendaya must feel like a serious threat to you.
Yeah.
And she doesn't quite feel that way.
Rachel doesn't make a comment about how she feels scared about her. I think that's
Yes,
actually something that's missing from the white
that's
womanhood of
true.
Rachel, actually. She's
That's
not been like, oh my
true.
God, she's crazy. Get me away from me.
You should have seen the physicality of her like shuddering away from her a bit more
Yeah,
to, because white women do it around Black women in general anyway, even without them thinking that they're a school shooter.
exactly.
I agree. I agree. I think a weird thing that happens in the film is that when you see Emma through the lens of Charlie's fantasies, stroke fears, stroke delusions, that's the closest I actually get to being scared of her. But what we're supposed to be seeing of
Hmm.
objective reality, I don't actually feel the threats or the
I
creepiness
agree.
that strongly. And I'm wondering what's up with that.
But do you think that's just because we're black women ourselves?
Maybe.
Could be, isn't it?
Because the way other cinephiles who are not black women are reacting to this film, they seem to be adequately disturbed, but yet still very protective and affectionate towards the Emma character, and they're very satisfied with the overall takeaway they have. So I'm like, yeah, maybe there's a way I'm scrutinizing this kind of character as a black woman that other people would not have.
Yeah. One other aspect of this film which I really did love is the soundtrack. Okay, there were two songs in particular that worked particularly well for me. So the main song that they say Emma uses to wind Charlie up, basically, it's a version of a song that I really love by a band called Odyssey, called Inside Out. First of all, I love the song. I even like the version that's used in the film. And I just highly recommend that everybody goes to listen to their work. They have a really beautiful song about New York, and as a Londoner, I'm very jealous of New York and how there's so many songs that like sing its praises in a way that we don't have. The other musical moment that I loved in this film was when they dropped Alicia Keys's.
I was hoping you would say, "Cause tonight I'm gonna find a way to make it." Try sleeping with a broken heart.
Yeah, when they dropped
I
Alicia
love
Keys's "Try
it.
Sleeping with a Broken Heart," I was gagged. I loved
I
it.
loved
That was
it. I loved
fantastic.
it. That was great. I completely agree. And I've seen other people, other black people as well, saying that was fire. And I agree. And it's such an, if you're going to pick an Alicia Keys song, it's a different Alicia Keys song than you typically expect. Because usually people pull from her very, very, very early days of like, braided Alicia Keys. Whereas this is
Mm-hmm.
like mid-career Alicia Keys when the hair was straight, when she was doing Empire State of Mind. But it's still such a great like pop song, but it also works for the vibe of the
It
film.
worked
I really
so
loved it.
well.
I really loved it.
And I
It
love
was
the
a
scene
great
in general.
choice.
They both did a good job of just looking awkward as hell. So good job there to the film.
That was a really good choice. I wonder where that choice originates from. Was that always going to be the case if Emma had been a white character? Like, I'm curious. If
Mm.
if Sydney Sweeney was playing Emma, would we have had that Alicia Keys try sleeping with a broken heart moment? I'm curious.
And you know what the sad thing is?
I know what you don't say
I
Sydney Sweeney
might.
would have been better. Don't say it.
All I'm gonna say is Sydney Sweeney probably would have convinced me of the crazy aspects of that character more, and I'm gonna leave it there.
You're not wrong. The unfortunate thing, Sydney Sweeney, I mean, there's so much we could say about that human being, and you and I are not fans, but unfortunately,
No.
she's a very good actress.
Oh, you think?
And I think she is. I think she's a very good actress, and I think in particular, this would be the kind of role that would be perfect for her.
Yeah, she's very good at playing these messy women.
And these like low-key psychotic women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or even Amanda Seyfried.
Amanda it would be too grown for it at this point, but yeah, she would also be great. I mean, you see that level of derangement that Amanda
Mm.
Seyfried is giving in The Dropout. This is the level of like unsettled I wanted to feel
Yeah.
from this Emma character. I wanted to be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I wanted to be
Yeah.
shaken every time I looked at her. Mm.
Des, what would you give the drama?
I would give it a good 6 out of 10.
Oh
What about you?
wow. Okay. Despite the way how I dragged this film, I have to stay true to my first watching in the cinema, and I give it a 7 out of 10.
The next film we're talking about is Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary is a 2026 American science fiction film produced and directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller and written by Drew Goddard. It's based on a 2021 novel by Andy Weir. It stars Ryan Gosling, who also produced the film, as a protagonist, Ryland Grace, who is a man that awakens on an interstellar spacecraft with no memory of how he got there. Dee, why are we discussing Project Hail Mary?
To be honest, I watched this film on a whim. I'd seen a lot of the advertising for it, but I don't know, nothing really gagged me about it. But I happened to be traveling, and I really liked the cinema culture in Brazil, and that was the only one that had English language, I'm afraid. So I decided to watch it. I actually wanted to watch Sirat at the time, but I completely, for some reason, forgot that it wasn't in English. So like, and I don't speak Portuguese properly, so I wasn't going to be able to understand it. I guess, obviously, we both studied chemistry to a very high level. We studied it to master's level, and a big part of our chemistry degree was all sorts of physical concepts. And I don't know about you, but I also studied physics for A level, which included quite a few modules on space science as well. So I am interested in it. What about you?
Well, I am low-key a person that has never bought into Ryan Gosling, movie star propaganda, so I wasn't gagging over the film. But Interstellar is arguably my favorite film of all time, so I tend to be open to these space epics and stuff like that. And then I heard people saying it was one of their favorite things they'd ever watched, and it made them really feel good and stuff like that. So I was like, why not? But other than that, I wasn't super incensed to watch it.
And did you have any further background about the movie before watching it?
No, I'd never watched any trailers. I didn't even consume that much of the marketing for it because I wasn't even in the West when they started promoting this film, and it wasn't promoted heavily in the country I'm in right now. My algorithm wasn't really on it that much, and I didn't know much about the book, and the cast is not that stacked. Our good sis, our queen Sandra Hüller, is in the film,
Yeah.
but other than that, and I like Lionel Boyce, but that was pretty much it. And like I said, I don't care about Ryan Gosling as a movie star, so other than that, actually no, I went in quite blind and without context.
Yeah, same for me. Also, Eric from Industry's in there as well, right?
Yeah, oh yes, he is.
And he's also playing a very cold, callous character again.
Playing a colors Chinese astronaut. Very interesting.
Des, was Project Hail Mary good, bad, or mid?
Mid. Maybe bad.
Why did you say it's really bad?
It's maybe bad. Do I want to adjust to
Why?
bad? It's mid. It's mid.
Okay.
What about you? What do you think?
I thought it was mid. I thought it was mid.
Oh my god.
And by the way, that's really bad that I'm saying it's mid because there are some themes here which very much align with my philosophies on life. But I just found it very boring. I wasn't gagged by Ryan Gosling. If anything, my favorite character was the little crab thing, alien thing. And he doesn't even have a face. And I'm even assuming it's a he. So, yeah.
let me tell you the tea about this Project Hail Mary film. This film, I am bewildered as to why people think it's a serious film or some like a serious accomplishment of filmmaking. I understand why it's commercially successful. That I know is because people have been looking for like a new white man to believe in, and this gives them that with like very little strings or serious thoughts associated, and it has quite a bit of spectacle. It feels like almost like an 80s movie in many ways.
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah. And even the way the music is used in the film, very typical of Lord and Miller. They love using music in this way. It's an extremely American, capital A American film. Like, and I don't think there's anything that demonstrates that more clearly than the scene where they're trying to decide which voice they should use for the crab, which artificial voice, and they go through different variations of women's voices, Asian people's voices, different voices, and they settle on the one that just sounds like a generic white American man talking. I think that's just a great summary of what's going on here. The reason that I don't think it's a bad film though is because the practical effects for the film I think are admirable, and this film, the entire film was shot without any green screen, which I do think is quite impressive.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So a lot of it is practical, and the crab Rocky is fully puppeteered the entire film by a real life person that was on set.
Wow.
None of it is CGI. So I mean, of course, there's some special effects, but in terms of the motion and the performance of the Rocky character, that is a real person that's doing that.
Okay.
And it's actually the voice of the puppeteer that is also the voice of Rocky. So that is quite nice, and I think it looks okay. And Ryan Gosling, I didn't hate his performance. I just didn't really care. Now, in terms of the themes of the film, I think the film is completely like emotionally bankrupt.
Oh,
And
okay.
the
Interesting.
conclusion, by the time you get to the conclusion of the film, I felt almost nothing. Not completely nothing, but almost nothing. And part of the reason for that was in addition to me feeling like the film does not want to truly inquire into the depravity of what it's suggesting that has happened
Exactly.
here, is also because, crucially, the science is so nonsensical, it takes me out of it. Like, the way time just people jumping back and forth, journeys that should take years. It feels completely not tangible in this film. It takes away from the emotional impact of the decision that these characters are making on me. So that's why overall to me the film is mid. By the end of this conversation, I might think is bad.
So like you, I do think that the visuals and stuff like that, of course, all of that was good, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. Most importantly, I think that the visual stuff was done better in Interstellar. I think the language translation stuff was done better in Arrival. I also feel like Sandra Hüller was like dramatically underused. I think she's a phenomenal actress, and like not to be rude to anyone, Germans don't hate me. I'm even going to your country soon. She basically played a stereotype cold German woman.
Whew, clock it.
You know, and it's like she can do so much more than that, respectfully. But whatever, I still enjoyed her. I will say that there's one key theme in this film which I found to be really disgusting, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, and it's this idea that Grace has to be the one to do this because he doesn't have a family.
That's why I said that the film is emotionally bankrupt.
Okay. Also, like, with these sorts of alien films, as a black person and as someone who lives in a Western country, but also comes from a country that is part of the global South, if you like, whenever I see these sorts of alien movies from the perspective of white people, I know that it's almost analogous to how they see people from the global South or people from black and brown countries. And so when they're doing even the like language translation stuff, I'm just like, there's a certain tone, and I think it's what you're describing as like the American, capital A American approach that this film takes, where I'm just like, this whole film is about the outsider accommodating the white American. And there's just something about that I find to be tired, frankly. But sure, yes, it's a film about friendship. It's a film about chosen family, which should resonate with me, but something didn't quite stick. So let's talk about the narrative. So I'll be honest, I watched this film a month ago. I'm going to do my best to summarize what happened here. Grace awakens in a coma, basically, on an interstellar spacecraft, and he realizes he's the sole survivor of a 3-person crew, and the spacecraft is in like a distant solar system somewhere, light years away from Earth and everything he knows and everything he loves. So we find out that there's a type of organism, I guess, called an astrophage, and that these astrophages have infected other stars within Earth's solar neighborhood. We find out there's a whole task force which is investigating this issue, and it's led by Eva Stratt, who is played by my fave, Sandra Hüller. So Stratt is the leader of Project Hail Mary, and it's an international effort to send a crew to Tau Ceti, which is the only undimmed near star. And essentially it's a suicide mission. Whoever goes on this mission will die because the spacecraft can only carry enough astrophage fuel for a one-way trip, but the crew's research will be sent back to Earth via probes. So in the present, Grace, remember, is in the spacecraft, and as it approaches the star Tau Ceti, he sees an alien spacecraft, and it's actually a really cool scene. It's actually probably my favourite scene of the movie. It's very dramatic, but I would say perhaps unoriginal, the alien spacecraft, but anyway. So the spacecraft docks the Hail Mary, and there's a solid xenon like structure that is used for Grace to be able to go and meet the alien spacecraft. And when he does, he finds that there's this weird crab-looking, 5-legged, arachnoid-looking alien, essentially. And Grace names the alien Rocky, after Rocky Balboa. He creates a machine translation system to interpret what Rocky says, because obviously Rocky doesn't speak English, he doesn't speak any human language, he has his own kind of vocalizations. Essentially what happens is the two decide to work together to try and figure out how they can address the mission at hand, and so we see a friendship between the two start to develop. But there's some event that happens basically, and it all goes wrong, and long story short, Grace almost loses his life. And remember that Rocky exists in these like structures which are a spacesuit. And so in the climax of the film, we see that Rocky has to make a decision to either try to save Grace. He can either go back to his spaceship, save Grace, but then if he tries to save Grace, because of how he is, he would have to leave his space suit and potentially lose his life to save Grace. But we see that he actually does make that decision, and this is the whole like emotional climax of the film. It's supposed to be a really heartfelt moment where we see that Grace is choosing to adopt Rocky essentially into his chosen family, and that it's actually a really strong bond between the two. We get some flashbacks to see that the way in which Grace was as far as I'm concerned, coerced into taking on the mission was very problematic. He was actually drugged. I believe that he was actually quite violently tackled as well. And then there's this whole argument about how he has to be the one to do it because he doesn't have a family, which again, I find to be quite problematic. Long story short, what happens is Grace realizes he has to go back to Rocky to try and save Rocky, otherwise the astrophages would like take over his spaceship as well. And then in summary, the way how the film ends is that if Grace were to try go back to Earth, he would die. But we see that actually the Iridians adopt him and he ends up living the rest of his days on the Iridian turf. They produce this cute kind of like environment for him where he can survive without an ugly spacesuit, and we see that this is now his home instead of Earth, which coerced him and drugged him and didn't treat him very well. Very convoluted story. I did my best. Let's move on.
Well done. Well done. What you just did wasn't easy work. I don't think I would have been able to do it. It's really a plot. Let me talk to you about what I thought about the narrative of this film and my experience watching it. I will say the film didn't feel too long. It didn't feel like I was spending forever in the cinema like I have with some sci-fi films. However, the plotting was a problem for me because it wasn't adding up. The choice of how they were using flashbacks and times to me didn't really move me. It wasn't as impactful as it could have been when the quote-unquote revelations were made. Also, the various twists and turns to, okay, we're going here to get the Afro G, then we're not, and then actually we're going to rescue the crab, but then the crab is going to rescue me. Then did he die? Did he not die? Then they say goodbye and they leave, and actually no, he's going to come back again and say goodbye a second time. No. None of that worked for me. The film is a kids movie to me. Like when I say a kids movie, there are lots of great movies that are kids movies. Coco is one of my favorite films of all time, and it's an animated kids movie. But this film felt childish to me. Like it was talking like you're trying to explain a complicated concept to a child.
Mm-hmm. I put that squarely on Ryan Gosling as well, by the way.
Yes, I agree. I think I could tell he made this movie for his children.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was giving. And hey, the audience has received it very well. So clearly their experiment has paid off. Right? It's very much a family-friendly sci-fi movie. But I'm sorry, I'm not gagged when we live in the world of Arrival and Interstellar and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, it doesn't move me. I'm just like, okay, I guess. So the crab is very cute. I like the crab. I like the little stuff they do with the way the crab talks to Ryan Gosling. Like, that's all fine and good. But, again, it all felt a bit too juvenile to me. All the stuff with the Afro G or whatever it's called, and when he realizes there's a leak in the ship, and he's going to cure the ship, but the whole ship is the leak for the crab, I'm just like, it's just gibberish. Like, it's just, there's so many plot points just for the sake of propagating the plots. Like, it just feels like juvenile writing to me. And then when you said, like, their goodbyes were sad, were they sad or was it dragging? Because the first goodbye scene they have, I felt it a bit, but then it kept on going on and on and on. And they will say goodbye, then they'll put their hands together, then they'll do this, then he'll step near the suit, then he'll step away from the ship, then they'll say goodbye again, then he'll raise his hand again. Maybe I'm just a miserable person. But I was just like, let's wrap this up now.
The funny thing about all of this is I actually found this film to be more romantic than 75% of most of these romantic films.
Ooh.
Romantic in a platonic sense, but still romantic.
Okay, expand.
But yes, I agree. It's overly sentimental. Yes, I agree. It's made for a young audience. You know that I'm not particularly, what's the word for these people that, I guess soppy or like sentimental? I don't know how you would say it.
Soppy.
I'm not really, soppy. I'm not really one of those people. It didn't work on me either. I saw people in my screening crying.
What?
Yeah. I saw people in my screening crying. I saw people coming out of the cinema with tears down their face, and I'm just like, okay. It didn't quite work for me. But I agree with what you're saying. The plot is very convoluted. It was hell right now just trying to remember half the shit that happened and try and put it into a coherent sentence. So yeah, no disagreement from me.
D, does Project Hail Mary pass the Bechdel test?
I don't believe so, because I can't really remember much of a conversation between two women, but I think you have a different opinion.
I'm not sure. So the women in the film, we have Sandra Hüller as Eva Stratz, who is the head of the international task force behind the project. Then we have a couple of other astronauts or engineers working. So there's Olesia Ilyukina, who is a Russian engineer that's supposed to board the Hail Mary. And she speaks a number of times about the wider project. She speaks to Grace. I think she does speak to Ava about Project Hail Mary, but I'm not sure if every time is within the context of referring to Grace. It might be. There's apparently, looking at the cast list, there's apparently another woman as well, Annie Shapiro, who is a backup scientist of the Hail Mary. But I don't recall her at all. And there's also two other scientists, Dr. Brown and Dr. Lee, but I think they're quite minor roles. So there are a couple of women in the cast list, but the only memories I have of anybody speaking is Sandra Hüller and the other scientist woman. And I cannot verify that they actually spoke about anything other than Grace.
Yeah, I definitely can't either. So
I will say I lean towards I think it passes. I think you lean towards it doesn't pass. So TBD.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you feel the film handles gender in general?
I don't think it has anything to say, really. And obviously, we will have different opinions on this, or like, we will have opinions on it, rather, just because you've both been women interacting in spaces that are predominantly male-dominated, and also in the science space as well. If anything, I will say that, like, I guess, did Sandra Hüller's character need to be that cold? And the reason why I'm saying that is, the German stereotype aside, I do think there's also another stereotype of what it is to be a woman who's in a male-dominated space in general, but also in the science space. I think there is a stereotype of us being very cold. I do think, I don't know, maybe my mind is just playing tricks on me, but I feel like there were maybe some gaffes here and there about like how people were reacting to her because she is a woman who is leading a science project and a very serious government science project. Did you get that vibe?
I did. And I will say, as a counter, I suppose, that the film tries to do is that the other female scientists in the film, they tend to be quite bubbly and effervescent as opposed to her quote-unquote coldness. I do agree with you, though, but she is the most prominent woman in the film. In fact, she's the most prominent human in the film after Grace. And all I was thinking as I was watching her is that, okay, so she stars in Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest, both huge, excellent powerhouse international indie films. Hollywood comes calling to her, saying, girl, we want you to be in our big blockbuster sci-fi space epic with Ryan Gosling. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that's good money, and I needed to continue to fund all these like fun little exploits I'm doing in cool indie films. She has another really exciting film coming out this year. And she's like, all right, send me the script. And she just sees the script and it's like cold German. And it's like, okay.
On the
all
nose.
Right. She must get so many of those. But the check was on, she couldn't say no to this check. This movie cost like $200 million or something like that. So they were all paid good.
And people love it. So it was a good choice.
And they love it. But
she's such a phenomenal actress. I want to see someone give her something other than cold German stereotype woman. So, what do you think the film had to say about family and the isolation of Grace?
I think it had terrible things to say. Terrible, terrible, terrible things to say. Like you said, a big part of the thesis of this film and the characters of this film is that he is a worthy sacrifice to make because, quote unquote, he has no family and nobody will miss him. This is like rhetoric we hear all the time. And in the workplace, actually, this is rhetoric that permeates into the workplace when you're a single person or a childless person of any gender. I think it was for women, but of any gender. And it's such a toxic and evil thing that I really recoil against, because it puts onus on people who, for whatever reasons, at that particular point in their life, do not have children or do not have serious domestic partners, to have to basically pick up the slack of everybody else, basically turning them into second-class citizens, as even though there are many other parts of your life that a single person or a person without, quote-unquote, a nuclear family pays a tax on by being single in society. So then you're now then further burdened in the workplace, and you're being told that, oh yeah, we expect you to be able to give up this extra time and to be able to do, because unlike this person, you don't have any kid you're picking up from school, you don't have kids for half time, and it's like, that's their choice. I respect them for their choice. They have the right to make a family, but that should not, I shouldn't, they shouldn't have to divide their labor over to me because of their choice. You guys signed the contract of employment you signed with that person, and you signed the one you signed with me. We have nothing to do with each other, and our choices of whether or not to have family should not affect how much labor is expected of me. Like, it's so messed up.
And let's not forget, it's not a choice for a lot of people.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it's just not a choice.
A lot of people might not even want to be in that scenario, and they are, and you're still going to put that on them. It's so fucked up. And also, this is something you and I have talked about a million times. The idea that, like, a romantic partner is the be all and end all for, like, stability and community. There is no evidence that supports this.
Exactly.
Evidence repeatedly shows, especially for women, that having a community that you can just generally depend on and, like, you have some kind of healthy mutualistic relationship with is the biggest signifier of a healthy and balanced long life than anything else. Now, it is true men live longer when they are partnered up, and men tend to be more successful in their careers when they have wives. When they make those remarks to him, it's not based on him being a man. They just are broadly saying that he doesn't have someone in his life, so really, what does he have to lose? How do you know he doesn't have community? And the film is not interested in inquiring about that.
Exactly. That's really what annoyed me. We know that he's lonely in the film because you see it, but no one's asking the question of why. And most importantly, not only are they not asking the question, no one's thinking, how can we assist this? All they're thinking is, oh, this guy's lonely. He's probably gonna crack. He's probably gonna have some sort of depression. Let's send him into space on a suicide mission because, oh well, no one's gonna be at the funeral anyway. It's just a disgrace. It's really embarrassing. What I will say though, as a flip side to this, is like, basically you can't win in this society because if you don't have kids, if you don't have a nuclear family, then the assumption is, oh well, no one depends on you, you can't be trapped, right? And by the way, for many child-free people, that is the exacta law. So that's the whole bloody point. But on the other side, the reason why men who have families are considered more dependable is because, right, it's assumed that, well, you can't run off. You can't just quit your job and go traveling for 10 years because you've got a mortgage to pay. And that's the other reason why they like certain employers. They like you if you have a mortgage, and they will actually ask you, do you own a house? Or they'll ask you, are you married? Do you have children? Because the assumption is you can't, you're not just going to be quitting your job and going to find better because you're trapped, mate.
Where are you escaping
right?
to?
Yeah, where are you really going? So, yeah. Basically, you can't win, but I completely agree with everything you said about how society punishes those who are single and do not have children. It's really disgusting and, like, somber in this film, and I'm shocked because it's a kids' film as far as I'm concerned. But anyway.
Yeah, so that's a very important thing here, because I don't expect every film to reflect my own personal choices or ideological choices in terms of how you navigate life with friends, family, community, etc., etc. But what is sinister to me is that this film is not like a serious, dark, art housey film that's trying to present an ideology that I don't necessarily agree with, but is opening it up to me to critique. That's not what this is. This is a family fun popcorn film that is treating this concept as an assumed idea, and as a fundamental idea on which the rest of the logic of the movie is stacked upon, and is casually feeding that to children as this is the norm, this is the standard, this is what you should accept as the basis of reality. And I'm just like, so we're still doing this?
In 2026.
So yeah, I wasn't impressed. Ryan Gosling, let's talk about it, because a lot of people, especially after Barbie, really, really, like, genuinely love Ryan Gosling. And the success of this film, I've seen a lot of narrative about how this confirms he's one of the few big movie stars left, in that, like, him alone can sell the movie, because this film is not really based on super famous IP. And I really, really, really struggle with this concept, because Ryan Gosling is not a person that moves me. But I know there are a lot of people that they don't play about him because of The Notebook, because of La La Land, because of Barbie. All three of those movies, that man did not move me. This was probably even the most he moved me, and I was still not that moved. Also, how old is he supposed to be in this film?
Oh, I would guess what, maybe late 30s to 40s?
But the injectables. Anyway, go on. Continue what you're saying.
I think my issue with Ryan Gosling is like, sure, I think he's a good performer, but it's almost like he's got a singular character that he performs, and they mold that character for the film. It's not like he plays different characters. Like, I always know what I'm getting with a Ryan Gosling performance. And to be fair, there are many people who enjoy stability. They like knowing what they're going to get, but I don't happen to be one of them when it comes to films. I like to see actors who can adopt different personalities, and that's the reason why one of my favorite actors at the moment is Jesse Plemons. I'm sorry, I have to keep bringing it up. But, yeah, I don't know. It feels like he's playing Ken. It feels like he's playing other roles I've seen him do before.
I'm telling you, he's making these films for his children. And you know what? That's cute. I love that for you. But I'm not gagging.
Yeah. I kind of wish there was another strong personality in this film to kind of balance it out. Because you really have to like him if you're going to like this film. If you don't like him or his performance, the whole film just collapses onto itself for you. This is his film.
Because you need his charisma to keep you going. And again, it's not horrible. There's some actors that if they had tried to do this, I literally would have stood up and left the cinema because I would have just found it so unbearable. He knows how to act on a service level. He knows how to turn up the like capital C charisma. There's just something a bit like, I can't really explain. There's something so paint by the numbers, formulaic about it. I'm just like, girl, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Girl, I guess.
I wasn't feeling it. I think the spider had more charisma. The alien.
Well, yes. And so was the puppeteer that was voicing him, and I agree. Anyway, on the subject of the crab, let's talk about the science of this film. Let's do some dodgy science. Mm-hmm. You and I are both scientists. We're both chemists. We're not astrophysicists. But I think we have some general understanding of some topics that this film was trying to address. Did the science of this film make sense to you?
No. But do you know what? It doesn't actually have to make sense to me. But what I find more problematic is, again, this film is, I would say, a kid's film. And so therefore, like, the onus is on them to explain scientific concepts in a way that is accessible. And I definitely didn't get the vibe that this was done in an accessible way. Look at the way how I struggled with the summary. And if you all notice, I just skipped all of the scientific stuff because ain't nobody got time for that. What in the Petrova line, astrophage, we need to inhibit this reaction, we need to add a predator. It was just a bit much. Like, I think they should have said, do you know what it was giving me? It reminded me a bit of Tenet. Like, Tenet was just too ambitious with how it decided to explain the physics in that film, and I think this one does the same thing. I'm actually a bit shocked that, like, people loved it so much, because you do have to have some understanding of the science to get the seriousness of what's at stake here. What did you think?
D, let me list to you the films that I was thinking about as I was watching this film. Derogatory. Let me list them all out to you. So, I was thinking Interstellar. I was thinking The Martian. I was thinking Arrival. I was thinking Gravity. I was thinking 2001: A Space Odyssey. And now you've just mentioned it, I was thinking Tenet as well. And in the case of literally every single one of those examples, those films made me think more than this film. Even Tenet, which I have a big question mark on top of that film. But that film to me is more interesting experimentally than whatever is going on here. Now, let's start with Interstellar.
Agreed.
Let's start with Interstellar. Interstellar is one of my favorite films of all time. Sometimes, depending on when I watch it, I consider it to be my favorite film of all time. And the reason I ultimately think Interstellar is so successful with me is that it takes the science very seriously, in my opinion. And you could feel like the production and development of the film was seriously consulting on scientists across the spectrum. And it takes that serious level of science to deliver to me a message about love across the laws of physics as we know it, in a way that works very successfully on me. In many ways, this film is trying to do the same thing. But the reason it cannot work is because the main thing it is playing around with, which is like time and perhaps like fuel, like energy source as a fuel, it has no level of seriousness, like it doesn't make any sense. I think they said they have enough fuel to power them for what? like 4 years or something like that by the time we meet him in the film.
A one-way trip to the star, basically.
Yes, but after he has gotten to the star, they say he has like 4 years left of fuel or something like that to get back to Earth.
Yes. Something like
and
that.
then and then Rocky gives him some more additional fuel of apogee that's supposed to give him extra time. So by the time he leaves Rocky, and then when he realizes the leak is happening, and he needs to turn back, we're supposed to feel the gravity of that decision he's making to send the samples over to Earth without him being a part of it, and then choose to go back to Rocky. But how much time is that going to take? I don't know. I don't understand how much time that's going to take. Is it going to take 6 months? Is it going to take 30 minutes? Is it going to take 5 years? I think by the time it happens, we're supposed to understand years have passed between when he realizes that there is a leak and when he goes to go and find Rocky. Years of his life have passed. Did you feel the emotional impact of that?
No, I didn't.
What? And then, okay, so he then saves Rocky, and then Rocky is like, you know what, just come with me and then we'll refuel you. So that could have always been a solution this whole time, by the way. So he follows Rocky, he saves Rocky. The way this Rocky seems to be indestructible, no matter what happens, whether he comes out of his atmosphere, whether the leak happens, he always still manages to resurrect himself, which actually takes away the impact of how much of a threat you think there is to anybody's life in this film. So anyway,
because he's basically an arachnoid alien version of a magical Negro. That's what's going on here. Magical brown alien. Like, that's what's really going on here. Rocky will adapt to anything as long as it comes back to saving the white man. That's what's going on here.
Oh my god.
Can't you see what's going on? Rocky's even brown. But Rocky is raising anti-blackness. This isn't right.
I didn't even see that coming. I can't lie, I didn't see that coming. And don't forget, Rocky is also kind of queer coded as well.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, it is.
Rocky is non-binary.
You're welcome to the club, Rocky.
That's so crazy. I didn't even think magical Negro, alien, arachnoid is crazy. But in the craziest people, there's always a bit of genius in there. So I'm going on this journey you're taking me on. I'm with you, dear. I'm with you. It's all gibberish. It's all nonsense. So by the time they head off to Rocky's planet, and then Rocky basically is like, whenever you're ready to go to Earth, we'll get you to Earth. And he's like, oh yeah, just give me some time to think about it. So I'm like, so what's the consequences? There's no actual, there's no real tension here. There was no real serious risk. Like this whole few also, how long did it take to get to the planet? When we meet Ryan Gosling in the flashback, all the years it took to get from Earth to the planet where they were going to go and look for the predator, by the time he meets Rocky, they come out, he starts to leave to go back to Earth, then he turns back to go and get Rocky, and then they head to Rocky's planet. That literally should have taken maybe decades, maybe decades. But Ryan Gosling, what is the difference in his appearance over the course of these 20 years? In Interstellar,
Nothing.
It is so important in Interstellar that when you step on XYZ planet for X number of minutes, the way that affects the time dilation back on the ship, the way that affects the people you've left behind on Earth, you missing out on generations, him coming back on the planet and seeing people have quite literally developed gray hair for him over the course of minutes. Like, that's such an impactful part of how you're going on the emotional journey of the film. I'm just like, I don't know why people are so moved by this film. I didn't feel any consequences for anything. And the way it was handling the science was contributing to that. Then, next movie I want to compare it to is 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I don't know if you've watched it, but legendary, iconic, influential film, right? 2001: A Space Odyssey is a film that was made, if I'm not mistaken, in the 1960s, D. That film is literally...
Was it 1960s?
Yeah, 1968. No, A Space Odyssey came out in 1968. That film is quite literally over 50 years old. And yet, what 2001: A Space Odyssey does with the idea of meeting beings you don't understand and going out to try and figure out a mysterious thing, and then what you find there and what you bring back to Earth and what that means for time and individuality and identity, is so much more forward thinking than anything that happens in this Project Hail Mary film. The ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey that has been debated for decades, which is where you see that the main character has like reverted into this kind of fetal form, and he keeps overlapping with himself in different times of his life, is more curious and interesting than whatever this film is doing here. In fact, let me tell you the real TD. I even had hope that something more interesting was happening halfway through the film. When Grace and Rocky have that exchange about how I'm the only one left in my ship. It looks like everybody died. Oh, I'm the only one left in my ship. It looks like everybody died. Do you know what I thought was going on there?
What? You better not say what I thought you're gonna say.
No, D, you just called the crab a magical Negro, so I'm allowed to say whatever I want. I thought that what was happening there was that because Rocky had like 22 other people that were on its spaceship, and Grace had 2. They don't explain why they died. They don't. They're just like, oh, both of them just happened to survive, and it's like, okay, I guess. So because of the like coincidental nature of that, I actually almost thought they were suggesting something more interesting was going on that was linking the two of them together, and that like Rocky was some kind of final stage of evolution of Ryan Gosling after he got stuck in space for millennia, and he didn't realize that because they played all these games.
Okay.
That's no. This is objectively not what is happening in the story, but I almost thought they were playing.
Yeah, but it's an interesting
like
theory.
That would have been much more interesting than whatever goodbye, wriggle your hips that they did 50 times in that film. Because I was like, why do they keep telling me that both of them are the only people that survived the ship, but they refuse to explain what happened? I'm like, what are the odds that you're out in the wide expanses of space, in the middle of nowhere, and you just happen to come across one being that had the exact same experience that you did? I was like, oh, is there something there? Is it that like he gets lost up there in space and then weird freaky stuff happens with time and lots of time passes? And that thing you had told me, D, which is that in science, convergence, evolution, everything becomes a crab eventually.
Yeah, that was my initial thought. But actually, this is one of my critiques of the film, to be honest. You know, like, don't get me wrong, I like Rocky. I think Rocky's my favorite character. I think Rocky's very charismatic. The only problem I have with Rocky, though, is, again, Rocky takes on the burden that many ethnic minorities do in film, which is that he has to be self-sacrificial to support the white man's story. And so Rocky never thinks about himself. Rocky is completely self-sacrificial. If anything, Rocky even takes on the burden women do in film many times. Like, I wanted to see Rocky do something shifty, do something shady. Let him die, bro. Do something.
I thought there was going to be something sinister. Exactly. Even if it wasn't that, like, they were connected by evolution, I thought it was going to turn out that Rocky actually came here, was initially sent out with some kind of nefarious mission, but obviously he grew to feel affectionate towards the human or something like that. I thought there has to be some more interesting thing here that they're trying to say about what it means for us to be alien to each other. But I guess, again, because this is like a cuddly kids film, they're not interested in introducing those kind of cynical ideas, which, fine, I guess, but like I just kind of find that kind of boring.
Yeah, but hold on, wait. But we just reviewed Zootopia 2. And, you know, mild spoilers if you haven't seen it. There is a twist, if you like, at the end where the cute, cuddly Lynx character is actually shady. So, like, it's not beyond the realm for a kids' movie.
Exactly.
But the main issue I have is that, like, I think Rocky being an arachnoid-looking, crab-like looking thing is too on the nose. Because, like you say, everything does evolve towards a crab. So it's like, okay, that's kind of obvious. Like, I wanted a bit more creativity when it came to Rocky, but now that I know that the whole thing was puppeteered and all of that, that makes it more interesting. But yeah, when I saw it, I was just like, oh, of course it's a crab.
And my understanding is that that's just how the book is as well. Like it is a pretty loyal adaptation of the book, even though I think the ending is a bit different. So yeah, like all of that science was all gibberish, and I think the science was harming the quality of the film. Whereas like in comparison, something like Superman, I think the nonsensical science that's happening in Superman makes it more of a fun ride to watch. Whereas here, because you're trying to sell me on certain kind of emotional stuff, it doesn't work as well for me. Then could you explain to me exactly what is going on with the apogee and the predator and the prey and the sunspot?
What did you say? Apogee. Not you saying apogee. The astrophage. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right or saying it right, by the way.
Sure, if you say so. Could you explain to me what's going on there?
All I know is it's some sort of organism that somehow can eat stars, and obviously that's a bad thing when you're relying on the solar system or the environment that is produced by that star. And so they needed to find a way to inhibit the astrophage. And then I think the big discovery is that the astrophages were reproducing, and they were reproducing at an alarming rate because they had no predator, and so they had to introduce a predator to stop the astrophages from taking over and eating the stars. I believe that is what the premise is.
Stop it. D, that's enough. That's enough. Thank you, D. Now, my understanding is the aphagy is eating on the surface of the sun. Yes?
Yes, apparently.
The sun, which is 5,000 degrees Celsius.
Yes, correct.
So this is an extremophile, because extremophiles exist on Earth that can live in very high temperatures. But 5,000 degrees Celsius? Is it that because xenon is an inert element, that's why it acts as a good cage? But like, that's xenon gas, no?
Yeah, but I remember the film says something about how Rocky was able to form some sort of solid version of xenon.
Yes, I understand that, but what
I don't
I'm
know
saying
how.
is, how does that make any sense? Because to solidify xenon, because xenon is a gas at room temperature.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like at most group 18 elements, you would need to lower the temperature down to, like, I just checked, minus 111 degrees Celsius. So are you telling me that all those times that Ryan Gosling is walking around and touching that cage and interacting with that ship, it is minus 111 degrees Celsius?
Yeah, but aren't there all sorts of things that you can do to introduce some new other alloy or add some other element, and then it changes their behavior? Maybe that's what's going on.
So in which case it's not xenon then? Because that's like saying,
yeah,
oh, if you want to avoid having to freeze oxygen at minus whatever degrees, you just react it with hydrogen to create water. But we would never think oxygen and water are like interchangeable materials.
It's the same thing. Again, the film isn't trying to get into like exact details. So I think when they state stuff like that, you just have to accept it and move on.
I can't. And I'm just like Mark Kermode in that if I find myself picking at the details, that means the film has not worked on me. Because like, if the film has overall worked on me, on taking me on an emotional journey, I can close my eyes to the BS. But if I am questioning the BS at every step and I'm obsessing over it, that means I don't care about the rest of the story you're telling me. So yeah, all of that was gibberish. Then the last two things I wanted to ask about is A, why exactly is there only enough fuel for the suicide mission? That's not really explained to me.
I think that comes down to the politics of like how they distribute the astrophage, because I remember they made a whole song and dance about someone said that they only have enough astrophage for the singular trip, I think, and then a bit of leftover. But then I remember someone was like getting ready to pipe up and say, oh, actually we have some, but then someone shut that down. So it was giving that there was a political situation there. Again, it's been a long time since I watched this film, so I don't remember exactly.
Okay, I mean, I think there is some commentary in the film about like how difficult it is to get all the nations of the world to even work together in the first place and stuff like that. Okay, fair enough. I'll accept that. But now that we're talking about the science and the international relations of it and the ethics of it, I want to talk about the ethics of how Grace ends up on that ship. Because for the plot to work, you have to believe that Ava Stratz can get away with doing that. Excuse me, I'm actually not convinced she can.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think she can. I think the leap of logic that I have to believe for that to happen is I'm really struggling with it. Because NASA, now mind you, this film is NASA propaganda, is USA propaganda, and that, but at the same time, they can't bring themselves to criticize Americans too much, which is why she's a German. Even though Grace is proudly walking around in astronaut uniform with USA flags all over himself all the time. But she herself, who is responsible for this like miscarriage of justice and extremely inhumane action, and she's basically acting on behalf of this conglomerate of people which is heavily led and funded by NASA, but they made sure she's unambiguously not American.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't even clock that at the time, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I just feel like in the world we live in, and again, this is kind of like an alternative universe, so I don't need to apply real life logic to everything that happens in films, but in the world we live in, if NASA is doing, we just saw the Artemis 2 expedition that just happened. In the world we live in, if NASA is doing any kind of expedition that involves sending human beings, especially United States American astronauts, into outer space, the world will know. It's not something you can actually physically hide, right? It's not like Area 53 or whatever area. It's not like Area 51 where you can hide where the aliens are. No. It's like global airspace and atmosphere is such that people can tell when a country has sent someone out into space. And for the safety of the astronauts, they need to let the rest of the world know. They don't need to let the rest of the world know every detail of what their plan is, but they need to know that X number of people are going out to space. Do I really believe that the amount of congressional and international scrutiny that will be required will allow them get away with drugging a U.S. citizen and putting him on that on that rocket ship against his will and nobody noticed? Really?
I think the point is that nobody noticed because he doesn't have anyone to notice in his life. I get what you're saying, that like it feels unlikely. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not as optimistic, let's say, especially because, as you mentioned, sure, you know, you can't necessarily send things to space without any detection. The United States is not the only one that, you know, looks into space, right? But they can lie about what happened. So they can put people on the aircraft and then tell the public, oh, you know, we're doing an expedition. Oh, we're just going to take some photographs. And then, obviously, by the time we already know that that aircraft is gone, they're never coming back. They'll come and say, oh, there was a really bad mistake.
Okay.
Oh, it went wrong. Do you get what I'm saying? So, like,
yeah,
especially if it's at that level of seriousness for the existence of the planet, and naturally, as things are today at least, the United States would absolutely want to get in front of that before anyone else, because if there has to be a fight to get onto a planet, for example, or if there has to be a fight over resources, look at what's happening today. As of, what's the date today? The 11th of April. That's all I have to say. 11th of April 2026. Yeah.
Ooh. Do we buy Ryan Gosling as a scientist, or is this Hollywood BS?
No, I don't believe that he's a scientist. And I'm not saying that because he's goofy or anything like that. God knows a lot of our peers at Oxford in the science departments were goofy, so it's got nothing to do with that. I think it's because he doesn't... I think for you to be someone who knows or is educated in a scientific subject to that degree, you do require a certain amount of obsession. Because if you don't have that, you just won't survive. It's as simple as that. You won't even get in at that point, frankly. And that didn't come across for me. It just kind of felt like he was nonchalant about everything. And I understand that they're doing that to illustrate to us that this is a man who's very lonely and doesn't feel like he has to live for anything. But again, you know, that type of person is just not going to be able to be in the scientific world at that level, right? So what did you think?
Did you feel he was too sexy to be a scientist?
No. I've seen hotter. My high school physics teacher. What do you think?
I was actually thinking about it. That I was thinking about uni and all of our lab supervisors and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, did we have Hollywood-looking people in our department? Definitely not the heads of faculty, but there were always like master students and DPhil students that would be involved in tutorial groups, and some of them were even hooking up with the undergrads, which was low-key problematic.
But let's not, yeah.
And some of them were good-looking people, yeah. Many of them were not. Many of our peers in our chemistry degree were not, but some of them were. And actually, when I was in sixth form, the only other person that got into Oxbridge from my year, alongside me, and he was also a chemist, was arguably the most good-looking white boy in our entire year. And like he was like one of the most popular boys. He was widely considered to be very fine, and he just happened to be like very good at chemistry and maths and stuff as well. So it do be like that.
So who's saying that? That's a harmful stereotype.
No, it's a whole thing. You know, the whole thing about like the Hollywood version of a doctor, the Hollywood version of a pilot. Like it's always like they Hollywoodify them and people don't buy it. I don't buy him as a scientist, but it's not because of his perceived attractiveness.
My physics teacher at school, he went to Oxford, I believe. He actually helped me to get into uni, and like all the girls were crazy over him, including myself. So he was very, very good looking, handsome guy. I believe he's Greek or something like that.
Oh, Interesting.
Yeah, very
Interesting.
handsome. So no, sorry guys, scientists can be hot. Des, what would you give Project Hail Mary?
I would give it a 4.5 out of 10. Actually, sorry, stop. I would give it a 4 out of 10.
Okay. I would give Project Hail Mary 5 out of 10. And to be honest with you, that 5 is only because of visuals. Like, the storyline I found to be offensive. I like Rocky. Again, Rocky's my favorite character. But again, I actually found the arachnoid of it all to be quite on the nose. It was just made the emotional stuff didn't move me. I definitely didn't cry, but I know that it moved a lot of people. So
Yeah, this film was a very unserious Hollywood science movie. All the science was gibberish. Everything about the apogee, about how time was passing, about the xenon. None of it made any sense to me. And it was so senseless that it took me away from the film. I couldn't help but compare it to many, many other great, interesting, inquisitive sci-fi space epics like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Interstellar. Gravity is another very important one, where Gravity relies on you being able to sit down to spend time with this one character for almost the entire running time and be rooting for her, and the ending needs to feel really triumphant. And it's not an easy thing Sandra Bullock has to do, and she does it quite successfully, in my opinion, in a way that I didn't get that from Ryan Gosling here. The Martian, even Tenet, that I find to be a very questionable film in many ways, to me, it still has more interesting questions it's asking. So this film to me is like a clown show. It is like a juvenile children's movie, derogatory, and there can be great children's movies that are intelligent. This is not one of them. The way it handles the scientific ethics of what's going on make no sense to me. And Sandra Hüller, my good sis, I hope you use the check you collected for this movie to buy yourself a nice house, because the cold German woman stereotype was very unfortunate.
thanks for going deep with us. Like us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you're streaming this from.
Thanks for listening. We'll speak to you next time.